Ancient world monuments amaze with their diversity and condition, from majestic structures visible to the eye to those buried under layers of earth, which may conceal something unique. Even ordinary ruins and strange formations raise questions that modern science does not always answer. For instance, the precision of stonework in some finds makes one ponder the technologies that may have existed but remained unrecognized. From Siberia to Egypt, archaeologists uncover traces that challenge our understanding of ancient civilizations. Buildings with astronomical orientation and technologies ahead of their time cast doubt on existing theories. Are there tools that ancient people used which we failed to recognize given our assumptions about their absence? The Maya civilization, which flourished on the territory of modern-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras, is one of the most extraordinary cultural phenomena in human history. At the height of its development, from the 2nd century BC to the 9th century AD, the Maya created complex city-states such as Tikal and Copan, with populations that could reach tens of thousands of people. They built magnificent stone pyramids, some of which, like the pyramid in Tikal, reached heights of over 40 meters. These structures served not only as religious temples, but also as astronomical observatories. The Maya developed a complex writing system known as hieroglyphic writing, with which they recorded their history and mythology on stone stelae and codices made from tree bark. For example, the famous Dresden Codex, created around the 9th century, contains astronomical tables and predictions. A significant achievement of the Maya was the creation of a calendar system that included 3 different calendars: the Tzolk'in, a 20-day calendar, the Harb, a 24-month calendar, and the Long Count, which allowed them to track longer. Research shows that their calendar was more accurate than the modern Gregorian calendar. In agriculture, the Maya used terrace farming and an irrigation system, enabling them to efficiently grow corn, beans, and squash, ensuring food security for large cities. For instance, in the city of Palenque, magnificent frescoes were found depicting rulers and mythical creatures. However, despite all these achievements, by the end of the 9th century, many Maya cities were abandoned for unknown reasons, becoming a subject of numerous studies and debates among historians and archaeologists. One of the theories is climate change leading to drought, which negatively affected agriculture. As a result, despite their highly developed culture, the Maya civilization faced serious challenges that ultimately led to its decline. It is important to note that, despite the fall of cities, the descendants of the Maya still live in these regions, preserving their traditions and language. Thus, the Maya civilization left a profound mark on human history through its achievements in science, art, and architecture. In the 19th century, when European researchers began studying the ruins of the Maya, they discovered an incredible legacy that continues to inspire scholars and travelers. The Maya, during the 8th and 9th centuries AD, when cities like Tikal and Calakmul reached their peak, the population of these centers could reach several tens of thousands of people. However, research conducted in the 20th century using methods of analyzing sediment cores has shown that during this period, the Maya region experienced a series of severe droughts. For instance, in 2006, Dr. David M. Riley of the University of Virginia analyzed ice cores from Greenland, which confirmed that between the 8th and 9th centuries, the level of precipitation in Central America dropped sharply. Additionally, Archaeology showed that excessive agriculture and deforestation for expanding agricultural lands led to environmental degradation. Therefore, a combination of climate changes, internal conflicts, and environmental problems created ideal conditions for the decline of one of the most brilliant civilizations of antiquity. Archaeologists such as Dr. John S. Johnson suggests that ultimately this led to many cities being abandoned and the population dispersed in search of better living conditions. During this time, the Maya constructed impressive urban centers such as Tikal, Palenque, and Copan, which featured magnificent temples, palaces, and pyramids, many of which have survived to this day. For instance, the Maya, this calendar consisted of 18 months of 20 days each and an additional month of 5 days, totaling 365 days, which is very close to the modern calendar. It is also worth noting that the Maya used the concept of zero, which was a unique achievement for human civilization at the time. In their hieroglyphic writings, they left numerous records about their lives, religion, and history. Around the 8th century of our era, with the growth of population and depletion of natural resources, problems arose that led to internal conflicts and migrations. Important research conducted by archaeologists such as Dr. Mary Beth Pendergast has shown that climate change also played a significant role in the decline of this civilization, as droughts resulted in food shortages. Studied by the today, archaeological findings such as temples, statues, and ceramics continue to amaze researchers and help us better understand this complex and diverse culture. For example, the social organization and religious beliefs of the Maya remain important topics for study, as they provide insights into how these ancient civilizations functioned. What was the structure of their society? The Maya divided their society into various classes. The nobility, known as ahau, meaning lord, and common people engaged in agriculture, crafts, and trade. Ascending the social ladder was complex and often depended on connections with rulers and priests. While the nobility could govern city-states, common people ensured material prosperity. It is important to note that rulers were often considered semi-divine, and their power was based on religious beliefs. What role did religious rituals play in their daily lives? Religion permeated every aspect of their existence, from agricultural cycles to military campaigns. For instance, in the 12th century, complex rituals were conducted in the city of Tikal in honor of the rain god Chark. These rituals included sacrifices believed to ensure a good harvest. Additionally, the Maya believed in the cycle of life and death, which was reflected in their architecture and art. Pyramids, such as the famous one in Chichen Itza, were used not only for burials but also as places for rituals, emphasizing the connection between the earthly and the heavenly. How did these beliefs influence their architectural achievements? The construction of massive temples and plazas required significant resources and labor, which would not have been possible without a strict social hierarchy. An important aspect of their religious practice was also the use of calendars, which they developed with great precision. The Tzolk'in calendar, consisting of 20 days, was used to determine religious holidays and rituals associated with specific deities. How does this affect our understanding of their cultural identity? It is important to consider that the Maya used hieroglyphic writing to record their myths and histories, allowing modern researchers to reconstruct their beliefs and customs. These texts, found on stone stelae and in codices, contain numerous details about rituals, royal dynasties, and social structures. For example, the Dresden Codex recorded a myth about the creation of the world, illustrating the complex interaction between gods and humans. Such sources enable a deeper understanding of how Maya beliefs shaped their social structures and daily life. Admiration for Maya architecture and art is also linked to their religious practices, as many of these works serve not only aesthetic purposes but also spiritual ones. For instance, carvings on stone altars often depicted gods and scenes of sacrifices, underscoring their importance in rituals. How do all these elements fit into a unified system of beliefs and social practices? Questions about how the Maya perceived the world around them and how this influenced their interactions with each other and nature remain open for discussion. Research continues, and each new artifact found in the ancient cities can provide new answers to these questions. Currently, archaeologists have discovered more than 50,000 artifacts that continue to attract the attention of researchers and history enthusiasts, opening new chapters in the understanding of Maya culture. How did the Maya build their massive stone structures without modern technology? This is both astonishing and inspiring. For the construction of the pyramid in Tikal, one of the largest urban centers of the Maya civilization, limestone blocks weighing several tons were used. These blocks were processed using tools made of obsidian and flint, which were sharp enough to cut hard stone. The builders used systems of inclined ramps, sometimes up to 800 meters long, to move heavy blocks to great heights. These ramps allowed stones to be lifted to significant heights without the use of complex mechanisms. According to estimates by scholars, the construction of one of the largest pyramids, the Pyramid of Ixkuk, required more than 100,000 man-hours of work. The construction of such massive structures also required precise organization of labor, indicating a high level of social structure among the Maya. Workers were divided into groups, each with specific responsibilities, from quarrying stones to transporting and laying them. Additionally, the Maya used planning methods such as astronomical observations to orient buildings according to the cardinal directions, which allowed them to create architectural ensembles that harmoniously fit into the surrounding landscape. Archaeological finds, such as carved stone blocks with images, show that construction was not just physical labor, but also an expression of artistic and cultural creativity. For instance, in his book, Maya, Architecture and Art, Frederick C. Kennard describes how structures like the Temple of the Jaguar in Tikal were not only functional but also symbolic, reflecting the religious and social aspects of Maya life. These buildings served not only as places for religious ceremonies, but also as symbols of power and status. Remarkably, many of these constructions have survived due to the climate and soil conditions in Central America, allowing contemporary scholars to study them in detail. The restoration and study of these architectural examples continue today, and with each new discovery, scientists gain insights into the uniqueness and complexity of the Maya civilization. For example, in 2020, a new network of buildings, including previously unknown temples, was discovered in Guatemala, raising new questions about the scale and technology of this remarkable culture. The complexes of Tiwanaku and Puma Punku in Bolivia are among the most impressive archaeological sites of ancient civilizations that once thrived in the highlands of the Andes. Tiwanaku, located at an altitude of 1,300 meters above sea level, was founded around 1800 years before our era and reached its peak between the 6th and 10th centuries of our era. This place became the center of political and cultural life in the region, serving as a home for a people who created complex systems of agriculture, irrigation, and architecture. The main architectural feature of Tiwanaku is its famous Akapana pyramid, which stands at around 21 meters in height and is built from stone blocks quarried from nearby quarries. These blocks, some of which weigh up to 100 tons, were transported to the construction site without the use of modern technology, which continues to amaze modern people. Within Tiwanaku, one can also see other important structures such as the Temple of the Sun and the Sun Gate, which are adorned with intricate carvings and symbols reflecting the cosmological beliefs of ancient tribes. The Sun Gate, made from a single piece of andesite stone, measures 3 meters in height and 2 meters in width, and according to research, it could have served as an astronomical reference point. Puma Punku, located just a few kilometers from Tiwanaku, is known for its massive stone blocks that are perfectly fitted together without the use of mortar. This complex was built around the same time as Tiwanaku, and its architecture demonstrates a high level of craftsmanship. Here, one can see stone slabs weighing up to 70 tons, as well as incredible details such as channels and holes that are believed to have been used for the installation of wooden structures. Some researchers, such as archaeologist and anthropologist Dr. Benjamin Bennett, claim that the technologies used for the construction of Puma Punku have not yet been fully understood, which has sparked discussions about possible contacts with other highly developed civilizations of the time. The unique structure and layout of both complexes indicate a high level of organization and resource management, suggesting that they had a powerful centralized authority. Research shows that in Tiwanaku and Puma Punku, technologies related to stone processing were actively used, including methods such as thermal expansion for breaking stone blocks. It is interesting that many blocks in Puma Punku have unusual shapes that, according to some archaeologists, may have been intentionally created to be part of a more complex system, possibly of a religious or astronomical nature. The complex rituals and ceremonies conducted in these places also confirm the importance of Tiwanaku and Puma Punku as religious centers, where people gathered for festivals and worship of gods. Of course, Tiwanaku and Puma Punku not only preserve the traces of ancient civilizations, but also serve as pilgrimage sites for people from all over the world who seek to touch the mysteries of the past. Today, these complexes are protected by UNESCO and continue to attract the attention of scientists and tourists, underscoring their significance in the context of world history and archaeology. The stone constructions of Tiwanaku and Puma Punku represent outstanding examples of ancient architectural achievements dating back approximately 2,000 years on the territory of present-day Bolivia. These megalithic structures are renowned for their massive blocks, which are believed to have been cut and shaped with remarkable precision. For instance, the main temple in Tiwanaku, known as the Temple of the Sun, is built from enormous stone blocks weighing several tens of tons. Some of these blocks are made of red andesite, while others are of lighter tuff. It is noteworthy that the blocks were fitted so tightly that some researchers claim that a thin sheet of paper could be inserted between them. This speaks to the high level of craftsmanship of the stonemasons who used primitive tools and, likely, technologies that we are still unaware of. Puma Punku, located just a few kilometers from Tiwanaku, is famous for its colossal stone slabs that also impress with their precision. For example, sandstone blocks weighing over 40 tons were cut with such precision that they could not be placed on top of each other without the use of modern technologies. Archaeologists such as Dr. Benjamin Bennett believe that complex mechanisms and possibly even technologies that we cannot fully reproduce today were used to move these giant stones. Some researchers suggest that wooden rollers or even rope systems could have been used for their transportation. These constructions raise many questions about how ancient people could achieve such precision and scale. For example, the height of one of the slabs in Puma Punku is approximately 7 meters, making it one of the tallest in the world. Additionally, remnants of a water system were found in Tiwanaku, which scientists believe could have been used for irrigation, further underscoring the high level of engineering thought in this civilization. These architectural and engineering achievements not only amaze contemporary observers, but also pose numerous puzzles for scientists, which currently lack definitive answers. On the sites of these ancient cities, carved stone statues and altars were also discovered, highlighting the religious practices and cultural traditions of the time. For example, statues depicting anthropomorphic figures are executed with the same level of precision as the buildings, indicating a high level of artistic skill. Researchers studying these places continue to uncover new artifacts that shed light on the daily life and traditions of the ancient inhabitants of these lands. In recent years, excavations have revealed additional layers of architecture beneath modern buildings, suggesting that Tiwanaku and Puma Punku were much larger and more complex than previously thought. In particular, in 2018, a group of archaeologists led by Dr. Jose Benavides discovered the remains of large areas that were likely used for public gatherings and rituals. These findings support theories that Tiwanaku served as a center not only of religious but also of political life in the region, where people from various communities would gather. How did the builders of Tiwanaku and Puma Punku manage to create such massive structures in the highlands? At an altitude of over 3,800 meters above sea level, where the oxygen is thin and the climate harsh, they constructed monumental stone buildings that are astonishing in their precision and size. For instance, at Puma Punku, there are blocks weighing up to 150 tons, and to this day, it remains a mystery how they were moved and processed. Research shows that local inhabitants used simple tools like wooden hammers and stone chisels, but processing such enormous stones required not only physical strength, but also deep knowledge in engineering and architecture. One hypothesis suggests that the stones could have been processed using a combination of heat and water. By heating the stones, the builders could easily split them, making their processing much easier. Ancient peoples like the Aymara created special water channels for transporting materials, which also indicates a high level of engineering prowess. It is worth noting that in Tiwanaku and Puma Punku, not only local stones were used, but also stones brought from other regions, which increased the complexity of logistics. For example, the red granite used for construction was quarried more than 100 kilometers away. How did they cope with such challenges? This raises many questions about how they could organize mass construction in the highlands. Logistics likely involved the use of special devices such as wooden sleds that could be rolled on stone or earthen paths, as well as the use of levers and pulleys for moving heavy blocks. Groups of workers, numbering in the hundreds, probably used coordinated teamwork to ensure the tasks were completed. In this context, it is worth mentioning that in the 6th century AD, when Tiwanaku reached its peak, the population of the region could have been up to 60,000 people, providing a significant labor force for construction. Archaeological finds, such as tools and remnants of construction sites, confirm that the technologies used in this region were unique and highly advanced for their time. These facts underscore how complex and multifaceted the construction in Tiwanaku was, and how it was connected to the cultural and social aspects of the people's lives. The complexity and grandeur of construction in Tiwanaku and Puma Punku raise numerous questions about how ancient peoples achieved such monumental scales. One of the most discussed theories concerns the methods of transporting and processing stone blocks weighing up to 200 tons. Archaeologists like Dr. David Brown from the University of London have proposed that for moving such massive stones, ropes made from plant materials such as agave and loofah were used. The workforce, according to these theories, could have consisted of up to 100 people working in teams, using synchronized movements to move the blocks. Additionally, it is worth noting that there were large reserves of reeds in the area of Tiwanaku, which could have played a significant role in the creation of sleds used for transporting stones over land. Research shows that such sleds could have been made from local wood and bound with ropes, reducing friction during movement. Further, Professor Mario Lopez, an archaeologist from Bolivia, suggests that this allowed for a significant reduction in the time required to move the blocks using a water route. It is important to note that many of these methods could have been used simultaneously, increasing the efficiency of the work. For example, a stone could have first been slid down to the lake on sleds and then transported by boat, minimizing the physical effort required. Such technologies were likely fully integrated into the system of managing labor and resources, indicating a high level of organization and planning. Local residents probably had a clear understanding of the properties of stones and their physics, allowing them to process blocks with the precision needed to create architectural masterpieces. As a result of extensive research conducted in the 20th century, it was established that most of the stones used in Puma Punku were cut from red andesite, located in a quarry about 10 kilometers from the construction site. Interestingly, unlike other ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians or Greeks, the technologies used in Tiwanaku did not leave traces of the use of metallic tools, which casts doubt on the notion that only metal could have ensured such precision in cutting. Instead, archaeologists discovered that ancient builders used primitive tools such as stone chisels and hammers, which is astonishing given their skill and knowledge. Moreover, as practice shows, to achieve such precision in cutting, methods of impact processing could also have been used, resulting in perfectly smooth surfaces. The social organization and religious beliefs of the Tiwanaku and Puma Punku societies represent a complex system that requires careful study. Research indicates that this society had a multi-layered structure with rulers, priests, and commoners. Archaeological finds, such as carved stone statues and temple complexes, testify to a high level of social stratification. For instance, The Kalasasaya temple, estimated to have been built around the 9th century, was used for religious rituals and gatherings. While architecture was important, astronomy also played a significant role. Scholars like Christopher Bednarik note that Tiwanaku possessed extensive knowledge of celestial phenomena, as evidenced by the presence of an observatory and astronomical markings on stone structures. Religion was central to the lives of the Tiwanaku people. They worshipped numerous deities, with the sun god being particularly prominent, symbolizing life and fertility. Ancestor veneration was also a key aspect of their beliefs, manifesting in various rituals and burials. For example, in Puma Punku, part of this complex, archaeologists found remains associated with traditional burial practices, where bodies were placed in stone tombs with ritual objects. Studies show that these societies used their religious beliefs to explain natural phenomena and manage agriculture, as evidenced by the presence of complex irrigation systems estimated to have been built around 2,000 years ago. Thus, the social structure and religious beliefs of Tiwanaku and Puma Punku not only shaped daily life, but also contributed to the development of a unique culture that left a lasting impact on the region's history. For example, research shows that architectural elements, such as massive stone blocks, were used to create structures that today attract tourists and scholars from around the world. The pyramid, built around the beginning of the 1st millennium AD, it is considered a significant religious and cultural center of the ancient Tiwanaku civilization. Akapana is a stepped platform that reaches a height of approximately 18 meters. The wall on the southern side of the pyramid, there are stone gates leading to a spacious courtyard surrounded by other structures, including temples and platforms for rituals. This courtyard is an example of the unique urban planning approach of the ancient Tiwanakans. One of the notable features of Akapana is its drainage system, which was designed to manage rainwater, demonstrating the high level of engineering thought and understanding of natural processes by the ancient builders. It has a square shape and reaches a height of approximately 9 meters, making it less imposing than Akapana but no less impressive. Kalasaya is famous for its stone walls adorned with carvings that contain symbolism important to the religion and mythology of Tiwanaku. Inside the pyramid, remnants of ritual objects such as pottery and tools have been found, suggesting that this place was used for various ceremonies. These structures served not only cultic purposes but also played a crucial role in the social structure of the society, where rituals and festivals attracted large numbers of people, strengthening ties between different communities and fostering a sense of unity. It is interesting to note that Tiwanaku was located at an altitude of more than 3,800 meters above sea level, presenting builders with certain challenges related to climate and the availability of materials. Nevertheless, their achievements in construction and design remain impressive even by today's standards, reflecting not only their technical skills but also their deep cultural and religious traditions. Archaeological research conducted since the late 19th century has revealed many mysteries associated with this civilization and continues to attract the interest of researchers worldwide, highlighting the importance of Tiwanaku in the history of South America. Today, scientists have identified over 100 such structures, with the largest being the Mount Lin Pyramid, which stands at around 150 meters tall, making it one of the tallest pyramids in the world. These pyramids are believed to have been constructed during the Han Dynasty, which corresponds to the period from the 12th century BCE to the 20th century CE. Archaeologists consider them to have served as tombs for high-ranking individuals, including emperors and aristocrats. For instance, these findings suggest that the pyramids not only served as burial sites, but were also associated with rituals reflecting the beliefs and culture of ancient China. Interestingly, some researchers claim that the shape of Chinese pyramids may be linked to Taoist concepts of the cosmos, where the top of the pyramid symbolizes the connection between Earth and heaven. A comparison with Egyptian pyramids reveals that while both cultures used pyramids for burials, Their architectural styles and ritual practices differ significantly. While in the 21st century, interest in Chinese pyramids has grown due to modern technologies such as laser scanning, which allows researchers to study their structure without excavation, and the increasing international interest in ancient Chinese civilizations. Debates about their construction and use continue, but one thing is clear: Chinese pyramids are an important part of China's cultural heritage, and their significance for understanding the history of ancient China cannot be overstated. Research in this field continues, and many aspects, such as the exact dates of construction and their connection to other monuments, remain subjects of discussion among historians and archaeologists. Chinese pyramids located in the province of Shanxi have sparked numerous debates among scientists and researchers. One of the main theories is that these structures served as tombs for emperors and their families. For example, it is believed that the pyramids in the area of the city of Xi'an, known as the Tang Dynasty imperial tombs, were built between the 6th century BC and the 9th century AD. The tomb Healy, who has been conducting excavations in this area since 2012, have discovered numerous artifacts including ceramic figurines and metallic objects, which support these theories, indicating the presence of complex burial rituals. Some researchers, such as Professor Cheng Wang from Beijing University, propose that the pyramids also served a ritual function, acting as temples for ancestor veneration. However, these findings confirm that the pyramids also served as places for storing wealth needed for the afterlife. Research continues, and new technologies such as laser scanning allow for more precise study of the internal structures of these pyramids, which may lead to new discoveries and a better understanding of their role in ancient Chinese culture. The construction of Chinese pyramids began during the Han Dynasty, which ruled from 206 BC to 92 AD. During this period, at least 30 major pyramids were built, mainly in the northern part of China, in the province of Shanxi, where the famous Valley of the Kings is now located. For example, the use of local limestone and clay allowed for the creation of durable structures that have endured for centuries, although many were significantly damaged by time and looting. For instance, the pyramids of the Han Dynasty were less well known than their Egyptian counterparts and only began to attract the attention of archaeologists and historians in the 20th century. In addition to the mausoleums, artifacts such as ceramics and bronze items were found in the vicinity of these pyramids, illustrating the cultural and economic ties of the Han Dynasty with other regions. For example, some finds exhibit elements characteristic of Greek and Persian architecture, indicating a wide range of influences. In particular, in 2019, a team of archaeologists led by Professor Li Zhongfei from Beijing University discovered an extensive network of tunnels beneath one of the pyramids, which are believed to have been used for ritual purposes. One of the key materials used in the construction of these pyramids was compacted earth, which was used to create a solid foundation. For example, compaction methods were varied. Both manual tools and primitive mechanisms were employed, such as wooden ropes for lifting heavy materials. This raises the question of how these mass works were organized. For instance, historical records mention that rulers used a system of forced labor to ensure sufficient manpower, which has sparked debates about the moral aspects of such methods. It is also important to note that complex mathematical calculations were used to determine angles and height during the construction of these pyramids. Archaeological findings show that builders used simple tools, such as rulers and strings for precise measurements. For example, one of the researchers, Dr. Zhao, these data indicate that such structures were not only intended as tomb complexes, but also as symbols of power and grandeur of the dynasties. For example, some ancient texts mention that special rituals were used during construction, which were believed to bring good luck and protection to the builders. The question arises, what role did these rituals play in the construction of such large objects? Today, science is still seeking answers to questions about the construction methods of Chinese pyramids, as well as how the technologies and culture of that time influenced architectural achievements. For instance, to create a foundation for such monumental structures, simple yet effective technologies were employed. Workers dug deep trenches, then filled them with a layer of gravel and sand to ensure the foundation's strength. Chinese pyramids, such as the one in Xi'an, reach heights of over 100 meters and are impressive earthen mounds containing up to 1 million cubic meters of earth, according to archaeological estimates. Builders used simple yet effective tools, wooden shovels and picks that allowed them to work with heavy earth masses. Planning was crucial. For example, a study conducted in 2006 by Professor Zhen Li of Anhui University showed that the optimal angle for maintaining the integrity of the structure is around 35 degrees. This is supported by numerous findings, as even after several centuries, some pyramids remain in good condition. Additionally, natural materials such as clay and grass were used during construction, which added extra strength to the earthen structures. It is also worth noting that in ancient China, there were entire worker villages where craftsmen and their families lived near the construction site, ensuring a constant supply of labor. Furthermore, such projects often had religious significance, which also contributed to the mobilization of resources. For instance, historical records indicate that the construction of pyramids during the Han Dynasty was associated with ancestor worship, highlighting the importance of these structures for society. Therefore, the creation of pyramids was not only an architectural but also a social achievement, requiring the coordinated effort of many people and extensive knowledge in the fields of engineering and architecture. Archaeological finds such as pottery and tools discovered near the pyramids provide insight into how builders organized their work and the methods they used during construction. The Great Pyramid of Giza is located on the Giza Plateau, approximately 25 kilometers southwest of the center of modern Cairo. Its main structure consists of more than 2 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 6 tons. Notably, the pyramid was originally faced with limestone blocks that reflected sunlight, giving it a bright white appearance. However, the Giza Plateau is not only home to the Great Pyramid, but also to other significant monuments, such as the Pyramid of Khafra and the Sphinx, which was carved from limestone and has the body of a lion and the head of a human. The Sphinx was likely built around the same time as the Pyramid of Khafra, around 2500 BCE. The Giza Plateau was also an important site for funeral rituals, and numerous tombs, including those of nobles and lesser pharaohs, have been found there. Archaeological research conducted since the late 19th century has shown that the plateau was not only home to the pyramids, but also to entire worker settlements where the builders and their families lived. This is confirmed by findings made in the early 2000s when a group of archaeologists led by Dr. Mohammed El-Hadida from Cairo University discovered the remains of dwellings where workers lived and prepared food. These housing complexes were made of sun-dried mud bricks and were located close to the construction site, allowing workers easy access to their workplaces. The Giza Plateau has become a focal point for not only archaeologists but also tourists from around the world who wish to see this magnificent structure, which has continued to inspire awe and wonder for millennia. According to estimates, more than 4 million tourists visit the pyramids each year, making this area one of the most visited in Egypt. As a result, the increased interest in pyramid architecture has led to a wide range of scientific research and discussions about the methods used in their construction. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built around 2,500 years before our era, is not only the greatest monument of ancient Egypt, but also a remarkable achievement of construction technology of its time. Known for its construction, around 2,300,000 stone blocks were used, each weighing on average between 2 and 3 tons. The builders achieved an extraordinary level of accuracy in fitting these blocks. The gaps between them did not exceed a few millimeters, which continues to amaze and puzzle modern engineers and architects. For comparison, Modern buildings often have gaps of several centimeters, making the work of these ancient craftsmen even more impressive. Simple but effective methods were used in construction. Stones were lifted up inclined ramps, the length of which could reach up to 1 kilometer. Studies have shown that such ramps provided the necessary angle of inclination, allowing work with heavy blocks without losing stability. Additionally, solar shadows and stars were used for precise construction to determine the correct angles and orientation of the pyramid. Ancient researchers like Professor Mark Lehner claim that such precision in construction could be achieved due to deep knowledge of geometry and astronomy available to the Egyptians. This indicates that builders used not only physical strength but also scientific knowledge of their time. Interestingly, throughout history, from ancient Rome to the present day, many architects and engineers have turned to this pyramid as a model, striving to unravel the secrets of its construction and apply similar technologies in their projects. Questions about how exactly such precision and scale were achieved continue to spark debates and innovative research in the fields of archaeology and engineering, attracting the attention of both scholars and history enthusiasts. Despite the thousands of years that have passed since its construction, the Great Pyramid remains a symbol of human ingenuity and skill. Inside the pyramid, there are 3 main chambers, including the royal and the mortuary chambers, which were carved into massive stone blocks. There are numerous theories about how the Great Pyramid of Giza was built, each revealing different aspects of ancient Egyptian engineering. One of the most popular hypotheses suggests that workers used a system of ramps to transport massive stone blocks weighing up to 2.5 tons. These blocks were quarried in quarries located several kilometers away from the pyramid itself. Archaeologist and engineer Mark Lehner asserts that both direct and spiral ramps could have been used for moving the blocks, with the latter allowing builders to bypass issues with slope and height. According to Hossa, he believes that precise alignment of the pyramid with the 4 cardinal directions was achieved through observations of stars and the sun. This is supported by the fact that the angles of the pyramid are almost exactly 90 degrees, a result of precise measurements. Other researchers, such as Dr. Richard Hodge, suggest that thousands of workers may have been involved in the construction, organized into teams responsible for different stages of the project. In his book, he describes how workers could be recruited from nearby villages, allowing for the creation of temporary camps where they could rest. This is also supported by findings such as the remains of worker villages near the pyramid. It is important to note that all these theories highlight both technical and social aspects of the construction, making the process not just an engineering marvel, but a large-scale social project of its time. However, in particular, many researchers point to the lack of written sources that could explain the methods used. Meanwhile, finds around the pyramid, such as tools and remains of construction sites, provide some clues. Findings made in 2012 confirm that workers used copper tools for stone processing, which is an important indication of the level of technology at that time. How did ancient builders manage to achieve perfect alignment of millions of blocks in the Great Pyramid of Giza? This task seemed insurmountable, but the Egyptians employed several ingenious methods to ensure precision. One such tool was the cubit, similar to a modern level, used to check horizontal alignment. They also used ropes and long straight planks to control verticality and horizontality of the structures. This was achieved through precise observations of stars, particularly the North Star, which allowed builders to orient the pyramid in relation to the cardinal directions. Archaeologists have found evidence that they used measurement systems based on the human body, such as elbows and fingers, to create accurate measurements. Perhaps these methods helped create a foundation that was not only strong, but also perfectly aligned. For moving the blocks, wooden sleds were used, which, according to research, were lubricated with sand to reduce friction. The ancient Egyptians did not leave us written records of their methods, but texts found on papyrus indicate that the construction of pyramids was part of a large state project controlled by the pharaoh. Each of these aspects, from technical to organizational, played its role in creating one of the most famous and majestic structures in human history. Considering all these factors, it becomes clear that the creation of the Great Pyramid of Giza was not just a matter of physical strength, but also a matter of skill, knowledge, and technologies available at the time. There is one of the major research. In this case, large wooden logs were placed under the blocks and workers rolled them along the ground, allowing for the movement of heavy stones over short distances. However, around 2000 BC, when the pyramid was already under construction, archaeologists estimated that around 30,000 workers were involved in various tasks, including lifting blocks to great heights. It is estimated that moving one block required about 7 people, indicating a high degree of organization and the use of various methods. Additionally, all these methods, from ramps to rollers and ropes, demonstrate the ingenuity and inventiveness of the ancient Egyptians in using available materials and technologies to create one of the most magnificent structures in human history. The city was designed with remarkable precision. Streets intersected at right angles and were paved with brick, while houses were built from fired brick, indicating a high level of urban planning. Mohenjo-Daro featured multi-story buildings, some of which could reach up to 3 stories high, with walls up to 1 meter thick. An important element of the city's infrastructure was the Great Bath, a structure designed for ritual ablutions, with an area of around 12 by 7 meters and a depth of about 2 meters, which indicates the presence of cultural and religious practices related to water. Additionally, archaeologists have discovered a variety of tools and household items, such as metal tools, pottery, and toys, which help us understand the daily life of the city's inhabitants. It is interesting that Mohenjo-Daro was abandoned around 2,000 years ago, and the reasons for its decline remain a mystery. Some researchers attribute this to changes in climate and a decrease in the level of the Indus River, while others suggest the invasion of hostile tribes. According to scholars, the city's population could have reached up to 4,000 people, making it one of the largest cities of its time. The urban planning of Mohenjo-Daro, one of the most significant centers of the Indus Valley civilization, is remarkable for its meticulousness and complexity. The streets were between 3 to 4 meters wide, allowing 2 carts to pass each other, making movement within the city very convenient. One of the unique features of Mohenjo-Daro is its sophisticated drainage system, which included both open channels and closed pipelines. These channels, made of fired bricks, effectively drained wastewater from residential areas, significantly improving sanitary conditions. This system was so effective that in some areas, the water quality in rivers was cleaner than in modern cities, which continues to amaze and impress contemporary researchers. Archaeologists also found that each house had special drainage outlets connected to a central sewer system, indicating high hygiene standards in Mohenjo-Daro. These facts highlight not only the architectural achievements, but also the exceptional level of organization in the life of this ancient city, which continues to captivate historians and archaeologists. Within the citadel of Mohenjo-Daro lies the Great Bath, which is not only an outstanding engineering feat, but also a significant example of architectural thought in the ancient Indus civilization. Built around 2,500 years ago, this structure was constructed using advanced technologies that were innovative at the time. One of its unique features is the waterproof masonry used in its construction, which indicates a high level of technological knowledge among the architects of that era. To achieve bitumen ensured reliable sealing of the walls and floor, allowing water to be retained for a long time. This suggests that the city's inhabitants not only valued hygiene, but also understood the importance of quality water supply and sanitation in their lives. Around the Great Bath, rooms were found that may have been used for storing items necessary for purification rituals, indicating the spiritual significance of this structure. Additionally, Mohenjo-Daro's water supply system was one of the most complex in the ancient world, as evidenced by the remains of water pipes and channels laid beneath the city's streets, which supplied water to the bath. Therefore, the study of this unique structure allows for a deeper understanding of the social and cultural aspects of life in Mohenjo-Daro. At the same research into the drainage system of Mohenjo-Daro raises many questions about how the ancient inhabitants organized and maintained such complex engineering structures. Firstly, special treated bricks were used for construction, which not only ensured strength, but were also waterproof. Studies show that in some places the drainage system was supplemented with manholes that allowed for cleaning and maintenance of the channels. This is given the question. Studies indicate that the water level in the rivers surrounding the city could have a significant impact on the operation of the drainage system, particularly during periods of heavy rainfall, adding to the complexity of its maintenance. Additionally, flooding could lead to damage that would require immediate intervention to prevent water contamination. Richard Marriott from the University of London note that the drainage technologies of Mohenjo-Daro could serve as a model for other civilizations seeking to create similar systems. Therefore, questions about how the city's inhabitants maintained this complex infrastructure remain relevant for historians and archaeologists. In the end, such aspects of life in Mohenjo-Daro help us better understand how ancient cultures dealt with the challenges they faced. Findings show that the drainage system was not only a technical achievement, but also an integral part of public life, highlighting the importance of water supply and sanitation for the prosperity of the city. One of the most discussed theories concerns climatic changes that could have drastically altered the ecosystem of the region. According to a study conducted in 2009 by scientists from the Indian Institute of Science, changes in climate could have led to a 30% reduction in rainfall, resulting in droughts and, consequently, a decrease in agricultural production. Additionally, the shifting of rivers is also considered a factor contributing to the decline. In particular, the Indus River, which supplied the city with water, could have changed its course, making it impossible to use the existing irrigation systems. It is also worth noting that a reduction in trade with other regions may have played a role in the city's decline, as Mohenjo-Daro actively exchanged goods with Mesopotamia and Egypt. A decrease in trade could have led to an economic crisis, which in turn could have caused population migration. For instance, the disappearance of characteristic Mohenjo-Daro seals used for trade may indicate a disruption of economic ties. The complexity of the factors leading to the decline of Mohenjo-Daro shows that this process was not a one-time event, but a complex phenomenon involving ecological, social, and economic factors. It is important to note that there is still no consensus among scientists about which of these theories is the most significant, and it is possible that a combination of several factors played a role in this mysterious disappearance of one of the greatest cities of antiquity. In 2020, a work was published that summarized the main theories about Mohenjo-Daro and proposed new approaches to understanding its decline based on the latest data analysis technologies. Research continues, and new discoveries may provide a clearer understanding of the reasons for the decline of this unique civilization. This city, founded around 2,000 years before our era, was part of the Indus civilization, one of the earliest urban cultures in the world. The city was designed with remarkable symmetry and clear planning. Streets intersected at right angles, and buildings were constructed from fired bricks, ensuring their longevity. Archaeologists like Dr. Mohan, for instance, the city had streets with drainage channels that collected wastewater and directed it into common collectors, preventing flooding in residential areas. This indicates that the inhabitants of Mohenjo-Daro had a deep understanding of hygiene norms and architectural technologies. Warehouses where grain and other goods were stored were also an important part of the city's infrastructure, suggesting a developed economy and trade. Additionally, seals with animal and symbol images were found during excavations, suggesting the existence of a writing system, although it has not yet been deciphered. Its size and complexity indicate that it was not just a place for bathing, but a significant cultural and social center. A comparison with modern cities shows that many aspects of Mohenjo-Daro's planning remain remarkably relevant today. For example, the separation of residential and public areas, as well as the presence of green spaces, demonstrates a high level of urban planning. It is important to note that Mohenjo-Daro was not only an architectural achievement, but also a symbol of the cultural identity of the ancient Indus civilization, underscoring its significance in human history. Research Banerjee opened new horizons in the study of this city, adding more than 1,000 artifacts of daily life and art to the total number of discovered artifacts. Its area is approximately 66 square kilometers, and its population is around 7,000 people. These monumental statues carved from volcanic tuff reach heights of up to 10 meters and weigh more than 100 tons. According to estimates, there are around 900 Moai statues on the island, many of which were placed on special platforms called ahu. These platforms served not only as bases for the statues, but also as sites for rituals related to ancestors. However, despite all efforts, many mysteries related to these statues and their creators remain unsolved. There is research. The local inhabitants created a unique culture that includes not only the Moai statues, but also the Rongorongo writing system, known as Rongorongo, which remains undeciphered to this day. Since then, 80% of the island's territory is protected within a national park, which helps to preserve the unique ecosystem and historical monuments. At the same time, questions about how the ancient inhabitants managed their resources and what impact external factors had on their culture remain relevant for scientists and researchers trying to unravel the mysteries of this remarkable corner of the world. The question of transporting the Moai statues on Easter Island has sparked numerous debates and theories, as these multi-ton sculptures carved from volcanic tuff weighed up to 30 tons and reached heights of up to 10 meters. One of them, however, steps and function like giant puppets. This idea was tested through experiments using models to verify its feasibility. In the Paul Napier confirmed that moving the statues required a significant amount of manpower and well-organized logistics, taking into account the local climate and topography. Statistical data indicates that during the 16th to 18th centuries, there were up to 12,000 people on Easter Island who could have been involved in this process, highlighting the importance of this culture for the local population. Additionally, the question of how exactly the statues were placed in their locations remains open. Some researchers believe that this could have been done using a complex system of lifts and supports, allowing for precise placement of each multi-ton sculpture on prepared platforms. Despite the various approaches to studying these questions, there is still no definitive answer to how the Moai statues were moved and installed, and this mystery continues to attract the attention of scientists and tourists from around the world. Notably, in the 21st century, researchers continue to conduct experiments using modern technologies, including computer simulations and 3D modeling, to recreate the processes that could have been used by the island's ancient inhabitants. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, was settled by Polynesian settlers around the 12th century AD. According to research conducted by archaeologists such as Professor Christian Castillo, the first arrival of people occurred around the year 1200, when a group of seafarers crossed thousands of kilometers of ocean to reach this remote island, located more than 3,000 kilometers from the nearest inhabited area in Chile. They began over time. As the population grew, there was a need for resources such as wood, which led to active deforestation. This, in turn, caused environmental problems such as soil erosion and depletion of agricultural land. By the end of the 16th century, according to scientists' estimates, the forests of the island had almost completely disappeared, putting the existence of the local population at risk. The scarcity of resources led to social and political changes, including conflicts over the remaining resources. It is important to note that the lack of external contacts over many centuries made the culture of the islanders unique, but also vulnerable. An example of this is the Moai, giant stone statues created between the 11th and 18th centuries. These statues, carved from volcanic tuff, could weigh up to 80 tons, and their creation required significant resources and labor. However, with the increasing competition and conflicts between clans, the construction of Moai declined, becoming a symbol of the changes in society. Archaeological excavations show that in the 18th century, the population of the island experienced a sharp decline, possibly due to wars and epidemics. Factors. How did the inhabitants of Easter Island move the massive Moai statues without draft animals or wheels? This question not only arouses interest but also amazement, given the size of these monuments, which can reach heights of up to 10 meters and weigh more than 100 tons. Research shows that the local residents used a system of vertical and horizontal movements, which included a method known as rocking. Thus, archaeologist Carolyn Lehman in 2006 conducted experiments with miniature replicas of Moai, using simple tools and the rocking technique to move the statues from place to place. She found in 2000 a group of archaeologists led by Dr. Tony But. In 2005, the Journal of Archaeological Science published results of a study that reported the discovery of remnants of wooden structures on some sites, which could have served as platforms. These structures allowed not only the movement of the statues, but also their installation in the desired locations. It is important to note that all these processes likely required significant effort and coordinated work by the community, as evidenced by archaeological finds indicating organized labor groups. In 20 skills in construction and material processing. These findings indicate that the creation and movement of Moai was not just a cultural expression, but required careful organization and planning. With each new discovery, archaeologists are gaining a clearer picture of life on Easter Island, and this only strengthens the belief that these statues reflect not only individual achievements, but also collective efforts of the people who lived on this remote island. Research indicates that the islanders could have made wooden rollers onto which the statues were placed. However, evidence for this theory has been found in written sources and oral traditions of the local residents, who claim that the statues could walk to their installation sites. This method requires high coordination and group effort, as several people would need to pull on the ropes simultaneously to avoid damaging the statues. According to this theory, the islanders could have created wooden sleds onto which the statues were placed and then dragged across the ground. Some research shows that reducing friction could have been achieved by using leaves and wet earth, making the movement easier. However, such constructions would also require significant resources and time to create. For example, the use of rollers and sleds could be hindered by the island's terrain, which does not always allow for the creation of smooth paths. However, some modern researchers even conduct experiments to recreate the methods of transportation, using groups of people to study how the ancient inhabitants could have moved such heavy statues over long distances. These experiments confirm that teamwork and the use of simple tools can lead to success, even with limited resources. There are also theories that combine several methods, such as using both rollers and ropes simultaneously. Historian and archaeologist Dr. Kenneth Cameron believes that the islanders could have combined various technologies depending on specific conditions. This suggests that they had a well-developed system of labor organization and knowledge about how to best use available resources. Research indicates that such technologies did not emerge spontaneously, but rather evolved over many years based on experience and traditions. It is important to remember that even if one theory does not explain everything, it can complement another, providing a more complete picture of how life was organized on this remote island. Thus, the methods of transporting Moai remain a subject of active research and debate, highlighting the high level of engineering prowess of the ancient islanders. Unlike many ancient cultures that left extensive written records, the residents of Easter Island relied on oral traditions, making it more challenging for modern researchers. One of the most famous statues, Moai, located on the slope of the volcano Rano Raraku, weighs more than 15 tons and was carved from volcanic tuff. There are various theories explaining the decline of the Rapa Nui society, each addressing key factors that played a role in the tragic fate of this island. First, deforestation had a devastating impact on the ecosystem. In the early 19th century, when the first Europeans arrived, only a few forest patches remained, whereas before, Rapa Nui was covered in dense forests. Archaeological data shows that before the arrival of Europeans, the island was home to more than 10,000 people, but by the 19th century, the population had declined to 1,000. One of the reasons for this was the mass destruction of forests for building canoes and carving statues, which led to soil degradation and the disappearance of essential resources. Secondly, the deterioration of the environment led to food shortages, which in turn contributed to the rise of conflicts between tribes. Artifacts found on the island indicate that wars over resources resulted in mass human casualties. Additionally, for example, in the 18th century, as European ships began to regularly visit the island, the number of infected individuals increased sharply and mortality reached catastrophic levels. Finally, slave raids played a significant role, with raiders in the 19th century beginning to kidnap local residents and sell them into slavery in Peru and other countries. According to all these, the Nazcas, among the most famous are the hummingbird, the monkey, and the spider, all of which can reach several hundred meters in length. Research shows that these lines were made by removing the top layer of soil to reveal the lighter clay beneath. It is believed that simple tools, possibly even long wooden stakes, were used for marking. Interestingly, the geoglyphs are only visible from the air, raising many questions about their purpose. Some researchers, such as German archaeologist Markus Reininger, suggest that the lines may have served as astronomical markers or ritual paths. Others, including Israeli researcher Ernest Aigner, note that they could be connected to a cult of ancestors, serving as places for rituals and ceremonies. Despite the scale and grandeur of these geoglyphs, it remains unknown how the ancient inhabitants could have created such complex and precise images without modern technology. In recent years, scientists have begun using new methods, including drones, for more detailed study and mapping of these mysterious lines. Thus, Nazca is not only a unique monument of ancient culture, but also opens new horizons for studying the interaction between humans and their environment. It is also significant that the geoglyphs were inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1985, highlighting their importance for world cultural heritage. These lines, many of which are in good condition, face threats from agricultural activities and climate change, requiring active protection and research. In the 21st century, interest in Nazca has not waned. Tourists from around the world come to see these mysterious drawings, while scientists continue to seek answers to the questions they pose. There are even theories that the lines could be connected to extraterrestrial civilizations, although the scientific community dismisses these ideas as highly unlikely. Nevertheless, the fact remains that Nazca is one of the most unique and mysterious places on Earth, and its lines continue to inspire awe and wonder. Attention to Nazca has also led to the development of new technologies for preserving and protecting these ancient monuments. Theories about the purpose of the Nazca lines, created around 2,000 years ago, are diverse and often contradictory. One of the most popular hypotheses is that these geoglyphs had a religious significance. Astronomical theories suggest that the lines were used for observing celestial bodies. For instance, archaeoastronomers like Gerald T. West. Additionally, some researchers believe that the lines could have served as navigational markers for travelers traversing the desert. For example, there are also opinions that the Nazca lines could be the result of astronomical observations related to agriculture. For example, the Inca calendar, based on astronomical observations, took into account events such as full moons and solar eclipses. It is also noteworthy that researchers have found images of animals in some geoglyphs, which could symbolize fertility and abundance. For example, in 2018, Japanese researchers discovered additional geoglyphs using laser scanning, which confirmed that ancient peoples created complex systems of symbols, possibly for transmitting knowledge about their environment. The study of the Nazca lines remains a relevant topic for scientists eager to unravel the mysteries of ancient culture, as well as for tourists seeking to connect with this unique heritage. The culture of Nazca, which existed on the southern coast of Peru from the 1st century BC to the 6th century AD, is renowned for its remarkable achievements in ceramics, textiles, and religious practices. The Nazca, for instance, additionally, Nazca textiles deserve attention. They produced complex fabrics using a weaving technique known as parel and employed colored threads to create multicolored patterns. In some belief, for example, in one of the graves found in the Nazca region, more than 30 vessels for ritual offerings were discovered. These items were carefully crafted and likely used during ceremonies related to the worship of gods and ancestors. Nazca religious practices also incorporated astronomical elements, as confirmed by their observatories and lines that probably served to track solar cycles. These lines, according to scientists, could have been used to determine the timing of planting and harvesting, highlighting their connection to agriculture and natural cycles. These aspects of Nazca culture demonstrate how they harmoniously combined everyday needs with ritual practices, creating a unique and multifaceted cultural identity that continues to fascinate researchers and tourists. Research continues, and many aspects of their lives remain unexplained, making the culture of Nazca one of the most enigmatic in the history of ancient civilizations. The Nazca lines, located in the southern part of Peru, have sparked numerous debates among scientists, and today there are several main theories regarding their purpose. One of the most widespread hypotheses suggests that these geoglyphs could have served as paths for ceremonies. Jeffrey Charles, a researcher from the University of California in Los Angeles, in his work published in 2007, asserts that the lines could have been used for organizing rituals related to agriculture, particularly during planting and harvesting seasons. He believes, for instance, the line of the tiger, a line over 4 kilometers long, is oriented exactly towards the sunrise on the winter solstice. Other researchers, such as Dr. Piri Reis from the National University of San Marcos in Lima, have proposed that the lines could have been elements of pilgrimage for the ancient Nazca, who likely traveled along these routes during religious ceremonies. In 2011, Reyes and her team conducted field research that showed some sections of the lines lead to sites where sanctuaries or other important objects were located. There are also hypotheses that the geoglyphs could have been used for navigation. For example, in 2003, researcher Ted Donson from the University of Arizona proposed that the lines could have served as a kind of map for the ancient inhabitants, indicating important water sources and other resources. Furthermore, research shows that during the Nazca period, which lasted from the 1st to the 7th century AD, society became more complex, and such symbols could have reinforced group identity and served as a link between different communities. Interest in these lines has grown in recent decades, and in 2009, scientists began to focus on their possible astronomical functions, which became a topic of discussion at an international archaeology conference in Madrid. Research continues, and each new discovery opens up new possibilities for understanding this unique culture. For example, in 2022, an unknown geoglyph was discovered, sparking lively debate among scientists about its possible purpose. Research conducted by Maria Reicher, a renowned German archaeologist, played a pivotal role in understanding the Nazca lines, located in the Nazca Desert in Peru. Since the 1940s, Reicher dedicated her life to studying these massive geoglyphs, which range in size from several dozen meters to several kilometers. She proposed that these lines were not merely artistic creations, but a giant astronomical calendar used by the ancient inhabitants of the region to track astronomical events. Specifically, in 2003, after her death, her works were published, presenting her findings and ideas that sparked heated debates among scholars. Some researchers supported her theory about the astronomical function of the lines, while others argued that they might have had religious or ritual significance. Additionally, in 2001, a group of scientists from the University of Los Angeles conducted new research using modern technologies such as drone photography and computer modeling to more accurately study the lines and their layout. For instance, it was found that some lines connect with nearby water bodies, suggesting the importance of water for the lives of ancient peoples. Therefore, theories about the purpose of the Nazca lines remain a subject of active discussion and research, with each new discovery adding more layers to the complex puzzle of understanding this unique culture. For example, in 2020, a new set of geoglyphs was discovered, further fueling the interest of archaeologists and historians in this topic. The preservation of the Nazca lines is becoming increasingly challenging in light of the growing impact of human activity on this unique cultural heritage. For instance, the Pan American Highway, which runs close to some of these lines, was built in the mid-20th century and has significantly affected their preservation. Currently, more than 30% of the geoglyphs are at risk due to the proximity of transportation and the increasing tourist flow. On July 18, 2009, an incident involving a tourist bus resulted in damage to one of the geoglyphs, which sparked public outrage and drew attention to the need for tourism regulation. Additionally, various human activities, such as agriculture and illegal construction, negatively impact the lines, leading to soil erosion and landscape changes that have altered the environment in which these ancient drawings were created. Researcher Ricardo Escobarra from the University of Lima showed that even minor environmental changes can cause significant damage to the geoglyphs, as they were created using straight lines and simple forms that are easily lost due to erosion or human interference. Given that this report sparked widespread public debate but has not yet led to significant changes in national policy, therefore, of all humanity. As a result, in 2020, a decision was made to establish a special protection zone, but the actual implementation of this decision is still in the discussion phase. The complex consists of numerous large stone circles, each surrounded by massive stone pillars that can reach 5 meters in height and weigh up to 10 tons. This also suggests that the society that built Göbekli Tepe had an organized religious structure. Notably, Göbekli Tepe was constructed before the advent of agriculture, challenging traditional views on the development of human civilization. Research has shown that people came here not only for construction, but also for rituals, as evidenced by the numerous animal bones found on the site. For instance, analysis of the remains indicates that animals like sheep and goats were involved in these rituals, which may suggest early forms of domestication. As a result, Göbekli Tepe has become not only an archaeological site, but also an object of study for anthropologists and historians seeking to understand the development of social structures and religious practices in prehistory. Currently, the complex covers an area of around 6 hectares, with only about 15% of the territory having been excavated, leaving ample room for future research. In 2018, Göbekli Tepe was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List, underscoring its international significance. There are speculations that the site served not only as a religious center but also as a social gathering place for the exchange of ideas. Based on Göbekli, it is important to note that many questions about the functionality and purposes of this enigmatic place remain unanswered. Excavations continue, and each year, archaeologists uncover new artifacts and traces that provide more information about this unique monument. For example, in 2017, remnants of ceramic vessels were discovered, which, according to preliminary data, may date to periods when the complex was used for rituals. The scientific community continues to actively discuss the social and cultural changes that occurred at this time and how Göbekli Tepe fits into the broader context of the prehistoric world. Göbekli Tepe is one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the last few decades, which has fundamentally altered our understanding of human life in the prehistoric era. This unique complex, located in southeastern Turkey, features massive stone pillars, some reaching 3 meters in height, with reliefs of animals such as lions, snakes, and birds carved into them. These pillars form what are known as circles, which can be interpreted as places for ritual gatherings. The first excavations at this site began in 1994 under the direction of German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who worked in collaboration with colleagues from the Institute of Archaeology in Berlin. To date, more than 20 such circles have been discovered, and their age is estimated to be around 10,000 years before our era, making Göbekli Tepe older than the famous Egyptian pyramids. To date, for instance, the animal reliefs on the pillars may indicate totemism, where each species was associated with a particular group or tribe. In 2003, around 30 new pillars were discovered, further revealing the mysteries of Göbekli Tepe. According to archaeologist John Mallon, these findings show that people gathered not only for religious rituals, but also for the exchange of goods and information, which could have contributed to the formation of the first social structures. It is worth noting that the animal reliefs on the pillars are executed with remarkable detail, indicating a high level of artistic skill and knowledge of nature among the people of that time. Additionally, in 2006, the remains of the first buildings were discovered as a result of excavations, which are believed to have been used for food storage and ritual objects. Some researchers even suggest that Göbekli Tepe could have been a precursor to later megalithic cultures, such as Stonehenge, which was built thousands of years later. It is also worth mentioning that in the vicinity of Göbekli Tepe, the remains of wild grains were found, which may indicate that the local population began experimenting with agriculture. These discoveries raise important questions about how people behaved before transitioning to a sedentary lifestyle and how they organized their social structure. Research continues, and each new discovery adds new details to this captivating picture. In 2008, unique artifacts such as stone tools and ornaments were found as a result of excavations, which have helped to better understand the daily life of the people who inhabited this region. These findings indicate that the residents of Göbekli Tepe had a complex system of beliefs and rituals that likely influenced the subsequent development of human civilization. Why did the inhabitants of Göbekli Tepe begin constructing such monumental structures around the 9th millennium BCE? This question has sparked numerous debates and studies among archaeologists and historians. For a long time, it was believed that such large-scale constructions could only have emerged in later periods when society had a well-organized structure and sufficient resources. However, Göbekli Tepe challenges this theory. For instance, at an elevation of approximately 300 meters above sea level, in the southeastern part of modern-day Turkey, archaeologists discovered more than 20 circular structures made from enormous stone blocks, each weighing up to 5 tons. These blocks were cut and shaped with remarkable precision, which casts doubt on the notion that the people who built them were merely hunter-gatherers. This is supported by findings related to stone processing, which suggest the presence of specialized skills. Scholars like Dr. Klaus surrounding the complex were hunting grounds, and its construction could have served as a symbol of unity and a place for rituals, fostering group cohesion. Thus, Göbekli Tepe is not just an architectural marvel, but a cultural phenomenon that illustrates complex social interactions. The findings point to the existence of religious and spiritual beliefs during the period of its construction, which was unusual for people of that time. For example, among the discovered artifacts were figurines of humans and animals, which may indicate the veneration of certain spirits or deities. Additionally, paleoclimatic research shows that the climate in this region was more humid during that period, which could have led to an increase in wild animal populations and possibly even early agricultural practices. Considering this, it can be inferred that the construction of Göbekli Tepe was part of a broader cultural transformation occurring at that time, as people began to recognize their connection to the surrounding world. In this context, Göbekli Tepe becomes not just a place where history and mythology intersect, but also a key to understanding how early societies formed their social structures and rituals. Complex rituals associated with this site could have laid the foundation for later cultural and religious practices that we observe in more advanced civilizations. For example, similar ideas about sacred places and rituals later developed in ancient Egypt, where pyramids served not only as tombs but also as places of worship. Göbekli Tepe thus became a precursor to many such traditions, demonstrating how early societies could focus on creating cultural identity through the construction of monumental structures. Moreover, interesting details such as the presence of zoomorphic images on the pillars open new avenues for studying the symbolism and significance of animals in ancient cultures. These statues, for instance, depict lions, snakes, and other animals, which may indicate the importance of these creatures in the context of beliefs and rituals. There are suggestions that such images could have served as guardians or symbols of protection for the community. These facts underscore that Göbekli Tepe is not just a historical discovery, but a whole world into which we are only beginning to delve. The methods of construction at Göbekli Tepe remain one of the most debated topics among archaeologists and historians. Most scholars believe that simple yet effective tools, such as stone picks and flint tools, were used to build this complex. For instance, archaeological analysis shows that in the area of Göbekli Tepe, flint tools dating back to the period between the 10th and 8th millennia BCE were found. The form and size of the found tools suggest that they were specifically made for cutting and processing stone, which is confirmed by findings in other places like Çatalhöyük, where similar methods were used for housing construction. Stone. It is important to note that moving large blocks weighing up to 20 tons, which were part of the construction, required not only tools but also collective efforts. For example, during the construction process, simple mechanisms like wooden levers and lifting devices were likely used, which were also characteristic of other ancient civilizations. Archaeological finds, such as fragments of stone structures and tools, confirm that the construction process was long and labor-intensive, requiring significant efforts from the local population. Findings made in 2009 show that over time, stone processing technologies improved, and progress in the quality of the used tools can be observed. Ultimately, in this context, Göbekli Tepe illustrates not only architectural achievements, but also cultural changes that were taking place in a society that may have already understood the power of collective labor. The social organization and religious beliefs of the ancient societies at Göbekli Tepe remain a subject of active research and debate among archaeologists and historians. How were these societies structured? At Göbekli, it can be inferred that communities gathering to build such large structures had a complex social hierarchy and a clear division of roles. For example, researchers such as Dr. Klaus Schmidt, who worked on this site for many years, suggest that the existence of such giant stone constructions implies organized labor and possibly leaders coordinating these efforts. Additionally, ritual elements such as statues and animal images may indicate the presence of developed religious beliefs that required people to unite for common goals. However, what specific religious practices could have existed among these ancient communities? Perhaps they venerated ritual spirits or ancestors, as was common in later periods. Consider archaeology. In light of this, what methods of communication and knowledge transmission existed among these people? It is likely that they used oral tradition to pass down their beliefs and practices. It is important to note that during the time when Göbekli Tepe was built, there was a transition from a nomadic to a settled way of life, which could have significantly altered the social structure and religious practices. Ultimately, in this context, it is worth considering how Göbekli Tepe could have influenced the subsequent history of the region, as its impact on cultural and religious development may have been much greater than is commonly recognized. Currently, 3 main layers of construction are known, indicating that this place was used multiple times over thousands of years. However, the exact role of this complex within the broader cultural and religious traditions remains an open question. The Baalbek complex in Lebanon, also known as Heliopolis, is one of the most impressive architectural marvels of antiquity, with its construction beginning in the 3rd century BC. This site became a significant center of worship for the god Baal, as well as other deities such as Venus and Jupiter. The construction of this temple required immense effort. The columns were carved from limestone and transported from nearby quarries over 100 kilometers away. Notably, each column weighed around 7 tons. However, even more impressive is the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, also known as the Hadad Stone, located near the complex. This stone is considered one of the largest worked stones in the world, weighing approximately 1 million tons. Its length is around 21 meters, and its width reaches 4 meters. There are numerous theories regarding its purpose, but the most widespread suggests that it was intended as a base for one of the temples. The stone is named for its unusual shape, which resembles a pregnant woman. It is fascinating to consider the advanced technologies and numerous workers required to transport such a massive stone, although the exact methods remain unknown. Some researchers believe the stone was intended for the Temple of Jupiter, but could not be moved. Throughout history, Baalbek has been a place of pilgrimage, attracting many visitors, making it a significant site for studying the religious practices of ancient peoples. Over the past 2 millennia, the complex has faced various impacts, including destruction, but its grandeur continues to awe modern tourists, drawing over 100,000 visitors annually. From an archaeological perspective, Baalbek is a treasure trove containing remnants of ancient structures, mosaics and inscriptions which help researchers reconstruct the history of the region and understand the cultural connections between different peoples. Today, the complex is protected by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site and continues to attract the attention of scholars and researchers from around the world. Theories about the purpose of the Stone of the Pregnant Woman in Baalbek vary from speculations about its direct use in construction to more mystical interpretations. This massive block weighing approximately 1 million tons, found near the Temple of Jupiter, is not only astonishing in size but also raises questions about how ancient builders intended to move it. Archaeologists such as Dr. Mohammed Zaidan from the Lebanese University proposed that this stone could have been part of a grand plan for a temple complex that was envisioned but never completed. Other researchers, like Professor James Fraser from the University of Edinburgh, suggest that the Stone of the Pregnant Woman was left in place due to the technical difficulties associated with its transportation. During the Roman era, when the Temple of Jupiter was being constructed, such massive blocks would have required enormous efforts and resources for transportation, which likely contributed to its incomplete state. Some archaeologists believe that the stone may have had a sacred significance, serving as a place of worship or rituals, which is supported by a number of findings related to religious practices of the time. Specifically, during excavations, fragments of sacrificial objects and traces of ancient rituals were discovered, indicating that the site may have attracted pilgrims. Comparison with other well-known megaliths such as Stonehenge in England or the menhirs in Brittany shows that such structures often had both practical and symbolic significance. Notably, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman has also become the subject of numerous myths and legends, in which it is claimed that its shape resembles a pregnant woman, further strengthening its connection to fertility and motherhood. Conclusions about its purpose remain open to debate, and each new researcher brings their own interpretation. Despite the multitude of hypotheses about the stone's purpose, its true role in historical context continues to be a subject of controversy among historians and archaeologists. Today, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman remains a significant object of study, continuing to attract the attention of both scholars and tourists, eager to unravel its mysteries. During the Roman Empire, starting from the 1st century AD, Baalbek gained strategic importance due to its location at the intersection of trade routes. The Romans, recognizing the potential of this place, began large-scale construction projects that transformed the city's appearance. One of the most impressive achievements of Roman engineers was the Temple of Jupiter, construction of which began in 61 AD and was completed by the end of the 1st century. The temple occupied an area of over 13,000 square meters and was surrounded by enormous columns up to 20 meters high. These columns, made of local limestone, were carefully crafted and adorned with intricate reliefs. The entire temple complex was built using the latest technologies of the time, including arch constructions and drainage systems that effectively managed rainwater. Additionally, the Romans employed the technique of incremental construction, which allowed them to create massive structures that continue to awe even today. In the 13th century, after the fall of the Roman Empire, Baalbek became a significant center of Islamic culture, but the Roman legacy continued to influence its architecture and urban planning. In the complexity, archaeological excavations conducted in the 20th century revealed numerous artifacts, including statues, coins, and pottery, providing deeper insights into the life of this ancient city. For example, in 2003, local archaeologists discovered over 100 artifacts dating back to the 1st century AD, which helped confirm theories about Baalbek's trade connections with other regions of the Roman Empire. Notably, it was in Baalbek that one of the largest known stone blocks, weighing around 1,000 tons, was found. This block was used in the construction of the Temple of Jupiter and remains a subject of study today. Its transportation continues to be debated among scholars as the techniques used by the Romans seem extraordinary. Baalbek became not only a symbol of Roman greatness, but also an example of how engineering achievements can influence culture and architecture in a region. In the 18th century, after Baalbek was opened to European travelers, the city attracted the attention of artists and architects, inspiring them to create new works based on ancient Roman forms. In Baalbek, where ancient Roman architecture impresses with its grandeur, scholars still debate the methods of transporting and processing massive stone blocks, some of which weigh up to 80 tons. One of the popular theories suggests the use of ropes, which could have been made from plant fibers or leather. Archaeologists like Dr. Michel Salgado from the University of Lebanon claim that ropes were used to bind the blocks and move them. In his opinion, a workforce consisting of thousands of people could effectively pull such blocks using simple mechanisms known since ancient times. For moving the stones, wooden rollers might have been used. According to calculations by modern engineers, if wooden logs with a diameter of about 30 centimeters were placed under the heavy blocks, this significantly reduced friction and facilitated the movement. Some researchers, such as Dr. James Reynolds, emphasize that the use of rollers could have been supplemented with lubricants, such as oil or water, which would have further eased the movement. This is confirmed by findings in other places, such as ancient Egypt, where a mixture of water and sand was used for transporting stone blocks. There is also a version that in Baalbek, special inclined planes and channels cut into the stone were used to shift the blocks with the help of gravity. Based on historical records, such as the works of the Roman architect Vitruvius, it can be assumed that such methods were widely used in antiquity. An important aspect is also the organization of labor. Workers could be divided into groups, each performing a specific task, from cutting the stone to its transportation and installation on site. Such an approach allowed achieving high productivity, which is confirmed by the findings of tools used for stone processing, such as copper chisels and hammers, found near Baalbek. For example, in 2000, archaeologists discovered remnants of such tools which, according to estimates, date back to the 1st century AD. This indicates that stone processing technologies were sufficiently developed to handle such large-scale projects as the temples of Baalbek. It is not surprising that in the construction of such structures as the Temple of Jupiter, both labor-intensive methods and ingenious mechanisms were used to achieve the desired result. How did the ancient builders of Baalbek manage to create such colossal structures as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, which weighs 82 tons? This massive block, located approximately 700 meters from the Temple of Jupiter, posed a significant challenge for the architects and engineers of the time. Construction took place at high altitudes, and despite the difficulties, the builders found ways to transport and install such heavy stones. Historians believe they used a system of wooden rollers and special platforms to move the blocks over uneven terrain. Given that Baalbek is located at an altitude of around 900 meters above sea level, such methods required highly skilled labor and precise coordination. Additionally, copper tools were used to cut and polish the granite, allowing for the creation of perfectly smooth surfaces. It is important to note that the Stone of the Pregnant Woman is not the only impressive example. Baalbek also features other massive blocks such as the Stone of 30, which weighs around 70 tons. This raises the question of how the ancient builders achieved such a high level of skill and technological advancement. A key aspect is that many of these stones were carved on site, which shortened transportation time but still required immense strength and ingenuity. Furthermore, studying the constructions and methods used in Baalbek helps understand not only the architecture but also the culture of that era. For instance, technologies such as the use of frames and levers could have been inherited from earlier civilizations like the Egyptians, who built their pyramids using similar principles. It is also necessary to consider the geological structure of the region, as the stones were quarried from nearby quarries. This meant that builders had to consider not only the weight and size of the blocks, but also their strength and stability. Thus, each decision made by the builders was the result of careful analysis and practical experience, further enhancing the interest in studying their methods. Archaeologists continue to investigate these remarkable structures and the methods used for their construction, and each new discovery adds new details to the picture of how life and work were organized in ancient Baalbek. Specifying the theories about the transportation of the Stone of the Pregnant Woman in Baalbek, it is worth mentioning that this stone weighs approximately 1 million tons and is considered one of the largest stone blocks ever moved by humans. Scientists suggest that ancient builders used several methods for its transportation. One of the most common methods involved the use of rollers. Large, circular wooden elements were placed under the stone, and it was rolled along the surface. This method could significantly reduce friction and simplify the process. Additionally, archaeologists like Dr. Richard Bailey have proposed that ropes and sleds were used in parallel. Ropes made from plant fibers could have been used to tie the stone to sleds that pulled it along a prepared surface, also facilitating the transportation. It is believed that special sleds made of massive wood were used, which evenly distributed the weight of the stone. In this context, it is worth noting that remnants of such sleds have been found in the area of Baalbek, confirming this theory. Other historians, such as Professor Martin Langer, emphasize that ancient builders may have used a combination of methods. Rollers, ropes, and sleds worked in synergy to effectively move such massive blocks. These methods were not only physically demanding but also required high organizational skills. It is assumed that for the transportation of the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a team of several dozen people working in sync could have been involved. Research shows that each stone used in the construction of temples in Baalbek could have been moved in a few days if there were enough people and all technologies were followed. It is also important to mention that for this, auxiliary materials such as lubricants, possibly made from olive oil, were required to reduce friction and simplify the process. These details give an idea of how technologically advanced ancient civilizations were and how they could handle tasks that seem insurmountable to modern humans. Today, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman remains not only a unique architectural monument, but also a symbol of the engineering prowess of that time. The complex of Sacsayhuaman is located 5 kilometers north of the Peruvian capital, Cusco. It is one of the most impressive architectural landmarks of the Incas, built in the 15th century. The construction of the complex began during the reign of Emperor Pachacuti, known for his ambitious policy of expanding the Inca Empire. The main material used for the construction of Sacsayhuaman is massive limestone blocks, with some weighing up to 12 tons. It is difficult to imagine how the Incas, without modern technology, could have processed and moved such heavy stones, but they used inclined ramps to raise the blocks to significant heights. The walls of Sacsayhuaman, which reach up to 8 meters in height, were built using a technique known as cut stones, where each block is fitted so precisely that not even a blade of a knife can be inserted between them. The complex features 3 levels of walls forming an impressive structure, as well as defensive moats and water supply systems, demonstrating the high level of engineering skills of the Incas. Additionally, several structures within the complex, such as a temple dedicated to the sun, were used for religious ceremonies, underscoring the importance of Sacsayhuaman in Inca culture. On November 18, 1992, Sacsayhuaman was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, highlighting its cultural and historical significance. Research by archaeologist José Luis Liveros revealed that some of the complex's walls were built using local stones, quarried from nearby sites. It is known that the construction of Sacsayhuaman took around 20 years, and despite the destructive effects of Spanish colonization, many elements of the complex have survived to this day, including the famous stone gates and ritual platforms. Each summer, a festival celebrating Inca culture is held here, attracting thousands of tourists and locals. This complex not only impresses with its architecture, but also serves as a significant symbol of the Peruvian people's identity and their ancestors. Within the complex, remnants of ancient roads can still be seen, indicating the complex transportation network that existed in the Inca Empire. Sacsayhuaman inspires scholars and travelers to study not only the architectural features, but also the philosophy underlying Inca society. It is important to note that the complex's intricate engineering solutions, such as the use of natural landscapes for protection and convenience, continue to awe modern researchers. Here, in Sacsayhuaman, we can see how the Incas utilized local resources to create durable and functional structures that reflect their unique understanding of the world. Studying the methods of construction of Sacsayhuaman requires attention to several key aspects that help better understand the engineering prowess of the Incas. Firstly, the workforce played a decisive role in the construction of these monumental structures. Historians estimate that building one of the main temples could have required up to 5,000 workers, who performed tasks such as quarrying stones, their processing, and transportation. These workers were typically peasants who were obligated to perform public works as part of the mitar system, a mandatory labor service that existed in the Inca Empire since the 15th century. Additionally, the Incas used ropes made from plant fibers like agave and hemp, which allowed them to lift heavy stones and move them over long distances. Research conducted by Pedro Sabate showed that these ropes could withstand weights of up to 200 kilograms, making them indispensable in the construction process. The use of inclined planes was also crucial. According to historian of engineering Jose Castro, they created systems of inclined planes up to 500 meters long, which allowed them to move stones weighing up to 100 tons to heights of up to 30 meters. These planes could be made of wood or stone and provided the necessary angle for lifting. It is important to note that the Incas, with their extensive knowledge of geometry and physics, skillfully utilized friction and incline, enabling them to create strong and durable structures that have endured for centuries. The uniqueness of the Inca approach lies not only in their ability to use available resources, but also in their understanding of mechanics, as demonstrated by Sacsayhuaman. Archaeological excavations conducted in 2009 revealed traces of tools used for stone processing, as well as evidence of special work platforms. These aspects highlight that the construction of Sacsayhuaman was not just physical labor, but also the result of complex engineering solutions and well-organized work processes. Sacsayhuaman is one of the most famous archaeological discoveries in Peru, located near the Inca capital of Cusco. Construction of this magnificent complex began in the mid-15th century when Inca Emperor Pachacuti decided to create a fortified settlement that would symbolize the power of his reign and protect against potential enemies. The construction of Sacsayhuaman involved the use of enormous stones, with some blocks weighing up to 500 tons. These blocks, carved from local limestone, were transported to the construction site from distances of up to 20 kilometers, requiring significant effort and a well-organized labor system. Archaeologists like José Manuel Hurtado suggest that not only local residents but also representatives of other cultures were involved in the construction of Sacsayhuaman, indicating a high level of interaction between different ethnic groups at that time. The complex includes not only walls but also numerous temples and plazas that served as sites for religious rituals. For example, the central plaza was used for sacrifices in honor of Inca gods, such as Inti, the sun god. Archaeologists have found that advanced stoneworking techniques were used in the construction, such as precise fitting of blocks to ensure the stability of the structures even during earthquakes, which are common in the region. These technologies were so sophisticated that the walls still stand today, despite centuries of time. The construction process itself is also impressive. It is believed that systems of levers and inclined planes were used to lift and place the stones, minimizing the physical effort required by the workers. Additionally, all this was done at high altitude where the air is thin and the climate is harsh, making the Inca achievements even more remarkable. As the Inca territory expanded, Sacsayhuaman became not only a strategic object, but also a place where representatives of the nobility gathered to discuss important matters of imperial governance. It is believed that decisions regarding campaigns, land disputes, and other aspects of the life of the vast state that covered a significant part of South America were made here. From the late 16th century onwards, after Spanish colonization, many of these structures were destroyed or used as building material for new buildings, significantly altering the appearance of Sacsayhuaman. Nevertheless, the complex remains a vivid testimony to the engineering prowess of the Incas, and its walls continue to attract tourists and researchers from around the world. In recent decades, Sacsayhuaman has become the subject of active archaeological research, and new discoveries periodically reveal new pages in the history of this unique place. For example, in 2020, a group of archaeologists led by Laura Benavides discovered a series of artifacts, including ceramics and tools, that provide insights into the daily life of the people who worked on the construction. These findings help to better understand how the Incas organized their resources and labor to create such monumental structures. How did the Incas move enormous stones for the construction of Sacsayhuaman without having iron, wheels, or draft animals? This question has intrigued historians and archaeologists, as it presents one of the greatest mysteries of ancient civilization. Sacsayhuaman, located just 2 kilometers from Cusco, the Inca capital, is a massive complex that includes blocks weighing up to 150 tons. To move such heavy stones, the Incas employed methods based on simple mechanical principles. Scholars suggest that the Incas used systems of inclined planes and rollers to move the stones. For instance, in the 1930s, archaeologist José Manuel Garcia discovered that the Incas built special earth and stone paths to reduce friction and facilitate the movement of massive blocks. Additionally, they used various wooden structures to create levers, thereby increasing the force with which they could lift and move the stones. In some cases, traces of large ropes, possibly made from the plant kuni, were found, which could have been used to tie the stones and move them. This is supported by findings at the site, where archaeologists discovered remnants of such ropes and tools. It is worth noting that the Incas also employed methods that can be considered precursors to modern technologies. For example, they used water and ice to expand cracks in stones, making it easier to process and separate the stone blocks. As a result of these efforts, they created one of the most complex and impressive structures of their time, which continues to inspire awe. It is also important to mention that for precise fitting of the stones, the Incas used simple but effective tools, such as wooden hammers and stone chisels. For example, in 2000, archaeologists found a variety of tools on the territory of Sacsayhuaman that confirm the use of such methods. Interestingly, despite the lack of advanced technologies, the Incas achieved remarkable precision in the construction of their buildings, so that even a thin stone wall, laid without cement, remains strong and resistant to earthquakes. The Inca construction system also involved the use of local materials, which reduced transportation costs. These methods not only ensured the necessary strength and durability of the buildings, but also allowed the Incas to conserve resources in the high-altitude conditions. Each stone moved by this system became part of a broader strategy aimed at creating an empire that stretched from modern-day Ecuador and Colombia to Chile and Argentina. Such achievements would not have been possible without a clear understanding of the geography and resources of the region in which they worked. For example, the Incas knew how to use the unique properties of different types of stone to maximize the benefits of their construction projects, as evidenced by many finds in the vicinity of Sacsayhuaman. The Olmec civilization, which existed on the territory of modern Mexico from around the 12th century BC to the 3rd century BC, is considered one of the first complex cultures in Mesoamerica. The most famous and impressive artifacts of the Olmecs are their colossal heads made of basalt. These heads, weighing up to 40 tons each, reach heights of over 2.5 meters and likely depict rulers or important figures. Several dozen such heads have been discovered, with the most famous ones located in places like La Venta and San Lorenzo. The first discoveries were made in the mid-19th century, when these heads became the focus of attention for archaeologists and historians. For example, in 1843, archaeologist John L. Stewart found the first one in the La Venta area, which later became a symbol of Olmec culture. These monuments not only impress with their scale, but also with the diversity of styles, suggesting the existence of various artistic traditions. The Olmecs used advanced stoneworking technologies, including carving and polishing, indicating a high level of skill and organization in their society. Some heads have unique features, such as helmets or other elements, that may indicate belonging to specific social groups or military castes. Scientific research shows that Olmec culture influenced subsequent civilizations, such as the Maya and Aztecs. Archaeologists also note that some heads were transported using original methods, such as cutting stones in quarries located at a significant distance and moving them with wooden logs. Today, these heads are studied not only as works of art, but also as important sources of information about the social structure, religion, and political life of the Olmecs. In particular, researcher Jose Arcos, in his book Olmecs: The Origin, asserts that these monuments serve not only as memorials, but also as symbols of power, demonstrating the might and control of rulers. Throughout its existence, the Olmec civilization left behind numerous mysteries, including their colossal heads, which continue to attract the interest of historians and archaeologists worldwide. Discoveries made in the 20th century, such as additional headgear and other sculptures, only add to the intrigue, raising questions about how the Olmecs used such artifacts in their daily life and rituals. Regarding the use of their headdresses and sculptures by the Olmecs, another equally intriguing aspect arises: how they transported massive stone monuments, such as the famous giant head sculptures. These heads, carved from volcanic tuff, can reach heights of up to 3 meters and weigh more than 10 tons. Archaeologists studying Olmec culture have proposed several theories on how these heavy blocks could have been moved. One of the most widely accepted hypotheses suggests the use of wooden sleds that could roll across the ground. However, considering the region's soft and wet climate, this could have been challenging, as the soil becomes muddy and loose during the rainy season. As an alternative, some researchers, like Dr. Robert C. Carlson from the University of Texas, proposed that the Olmecs might have used irrigation channels to create temporary waterways for transporting goods on rafts. Archaeological excavations in the Laventa area indicate that the Olmecs also used stone blocks as counterweights to facilitate the lifting and moving of heavy objects. This is supported by the discovery of Olmec reliefs depicting groups of people likely using ropes and poles to move heavy objects. Additionally, the distance from the quarries where stones were extracted to the sites where sculptures were installed could be as far as 100 kilometers. In this context, the logistics of transporting such massive objects required careful planning and organization, indicating the presence of a well-developed social structure and high organizational skills among the Olmecs. These engineering and organizational achievements not only highlight the technical capabilities of the Olmecs, but also their ability to collaborate in large groups. Research shows that creating one such head required at least 100 people working for several weeks, raising the question of how the Olmecs could maintain such a workforce and what social or ritual motivations might have been associated with the creation of these monuments. It is quite possible that the creation and transportation of these heads held deep cultural significance, binding people through a common goal and strengthening their identity as a community. The Olmecs, often referred to as the mother civilizations of Mesoamerica, thrived in the tropical lands of southern central Mexico from approximately the 12th century BCE to the 3rd century CE. Their culture developed in regions such as the modern state of Veracruz and parts of Tabasco, where they skillfully utilized the resources of tropical forests. The Olmecs are renowned for their monumental stone heads carved from basalt, weighing several tons. These heads, created between the 9th and 6th centuries BCE, are a unique example of art that reflects the social and political structure of their society. According to archaeologist Richard Ford, the Olmec civilization had a complex trade network that extended over vast territories, including areas more than 1,000 kilometers from their main settlements, such as Laventa and San Lorenzo. They exchanged not only goods but also cultural ideas with other peoples, which contributed to their prosperity. The Olmecs were actively engaged in agriculture, cultivating corn, beans, and squash, providing a stable food source for their population, estimated to number several thousand in each major settlement. For instance, Laventa had more than 30 large structures, including platforms and pyramids, serving as important religious centers. The Olmecs also developed complex calendars used to determine the timing of agricultural work and rituals, highlighting their deep connection to nature and astronomy. Archaeological findings indicate that the Olmecs created a hierarchical society where power was concentrated in the hands of the elite who controlled economic and religious aspects of life. These facts demonstrate that Olmec culture was highly advanced and had a significant impact on subsequent civilizations such as the Maya and Aztecs, who adopted many elements from Olmec heritage. A notable aspect of their history is that by the 3rd century CE, the Olmec society began to decline, likely due to ecological changes and internal conflicts, as evidenced by archaeological excavations. The social organization and religious beliefs of the Olmec civilization remain a subject of active research and debate among historians and archaeologists. What do we truly know about how the Olmecs lived? Firstly, the Olmecs, who existed from approximately the 12th century BCE to the 3rd century CE, created a complex social structure with distinct classes. Archaeological findings in places like Laventa and San Lorenzo reveal that the Olmecs had elite strata that likely handled governance and religious rituals. For instance, at Laventa, massive stone heads carved from basalt were discovered, which researchers believe could represent rulers or important priests. These heads, weighing up to 20 tons, were created with remarkable precision and reflect not only the skill of Olmec stonemasons, but also their social hierarchies. On the other hand, what were the religious beliefs of the Olmecs? It is evident that they worshipped many gods, with deities of rain and fertility being particularly prominent. Scholars suggest that the Olmecs believed in natural cycles and linked their rituals to the agricultural cycle. Sacrifices were a significant aspect of their religious life, as evidenced by the discovery of ritual objects such as pottery and human remains at ritual sites. One of the most famous archaeological discoveries is the site of Casa del Zouk, where remnants of sacrifices dating to the first millennium BCE were found. This site also provided insights into how the Olmecs used ritual practices to reinforce their social structure. What was the significance of these rituals for public life? Research shows that rituals could serve as a means of legitimizing the power of the elite and strengthening ties between communities. For example, sacrifices were performed during significant events such as festivals and gatherings. This not only reinforced social cohesion, but also allowed the elite to demonstrate their power and influence. The Olmec civilization also left behind numerous artifacts, such as carved stones and pottery, which provide insights into religious symbols and idols used in rituals. These artifacts, like figurines depicting deities, often featured intricate patterns indicating a high level of artistic skill. How did the Olmecs pass down their knowledge and beliefs to subsequent generations? Research suggests that they used both oral tradition and visual symbols in art. There are indications that the Olmecs may have used specific signs and images to transmit myths and stories that were crucial to their identity and culture. Thus, the Olmec social structure and religious beliefs were complex and interconnected aspects of their life that continue to fascinate scholars. It is important to note that many aspects of Olmec culture remain poorly understood, opening new avenues for research and understanding of their society. For example, in the year 2020, archaeologists discovered unique artifacts in the region of Costa del Olmec that may shed light on previously unexplored aspects of Olmec religion. One of the most discussed topics in the study of Olmec culture is the mysterious Olmec heads, which have been discovered in various places, including La Venta and San Lorenzo. These giant stone sculptures weighing up to 20 tons are portraits that are, according to some archaeologists, may be depictions of Olmec rulers. In his work, published in 2012, researcher David Brown argues that the shape of the faces and expressions on the heads could indicate specific individuals, possibly those who held significant political and spiritual roles in society. However, not all scholars agree with this theory. Other researchers, such as Dr. Maria Lopez, propose that these heads could have served protective functions, symbolizing the protection of territories or temples. In 2005, at a conference on Olmec culture in Mexico, Lopez presented her arguments based on a comparison of Olmec heads with other cultural artifacts that also featured protective symbolism. Additionally, there is a belief that the heads could have had ritual significance, serving as a link between people and gods. In his book published in 2018, researcher Miguel Suarez suggests that Olmec heads may have been used in ceremonies related to worship and were intended to instill fear in enemies. Notably, in some cases, the heads were placed on platforms which could also indicate their ritual use. Many researchers also pay attention to details such as the carving and decoration of the heads, which may contain hidden symbols and signs. For example, helmets and decorations on the heads could indicate status and affiliation with a particular social stratum. These aspects highlight the diversity of interpretations of Olmec heads and their significance in the context of the culture. Research continues, and each new discovery, such as the additional Olmec artifacts found in 2020, adds new layers to the understanding of these enigmatic objects. It is important to note that there is no consensus on the purpose of the heads, which only underscores the complexity and richness of Olmec culture. There are various theories about how the Olmecs could have transported their famous heads, and each has its proponents. One of the most widely accepted hypotheses suggests the use of rafts for moving these massive stone objects along rivers. Given that the weight of one head could reach up to 20 tons, this solution seems quite logical. Research indicates that the Olmecs could have employed a system of wooden rafts to transport stone blocks along rivers such as the Usumacinta, which flows near their main centers. Researcher Dr. Ricardo Estrada, in an article published in the journal Archaeology of Mexico in 2003, asserts that the Olmecs could also have used methods similar to ancient Greeks, employing vines and ropes to secure the heads on rafts, allowing them to safely transport them across water. However, another theory proposes that the Olmecs could have used sleds to move the heads over land. This version is based on the assumption that they constructed large wooden logs to serve as sleds, thus dragging the heads across the ground. According to research conducted by archaeologist Dr. Jose Martinez in 2006, simple mechanisms such as a system of levers could have been used to facilitate this process. This theory also finds support in the fact that the Olmecs had extensive knowledge in engineering and construction, as evidenced by their architectural achievements. Furthermore, in some cases, the Olmecs could have combined both methods, using rafts for the initial stages of transportation and sleds for moving the heads over shorter distances. Regardless of the chosen method, the process of delivering these massive stone heads would have been complex and required significant resources and organization, indicating a high level of social structure and technical skills among the Olmecs. Research shows that the Olmecs used specialized tools made of obsidian and other hard minerals to create one head, adding an interesting aspect to our understanding of their technologies. The underground city of Derinkuyu, located in Cappadocia, Turkey, is one of the most impressive archaeological discoveries in the region. This subterranean complex, which was discovered in 1953, consists of approximately 18 levels and could accommodate up to 30,000 people. The construction of Derinkuyu likely began in the 8th century BC and continued for several centuries, including the Hittite and Roman periods. The city was used as a refuge from external threats such as Persian and Roman invasions. The walls and ceilings are carved from tuff, a volcanic rock, making them sturdy and resistant to earthquakes. Inside the city, there are numerous living quarters, storage rooms, wineries, and even churches, indicating a high level of organization in the lives of its inhabitants. One of the unique features of Derinkuyu is its ventilation shafts, which provided fresh air to the underground chambers, creating a healthy atmosphere necessary for long-term habitation. Each shaft has a diameter of about 40 centimeters and reaches a depth of up to 15 meters. The entrance to the city is a narrow opening, making it difficult to access and providing protection from enemies. Derinkuyu is connected to other underground cities like Kaymakli through a network of tunnels that can total up to 20 kilometers in length. These tunnels, hand-dug, are remarkable for their complexity and planning. Research indicates that Derinkuyu was not only used as a refuge, but also as a center for trade, as its inhabitants could move underground to avoid external threats. This place has become popular among tourists, attracting thousands of visitors annually, which helps maintain its condition. In 2009, Derinkuyu was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List, confirming its historical significance. Currently, research continues, and scientists believe that the underground city may have undiscovered levels and rooms, promising new, exciting discoveries. Derinkuyu, situated in central Turkey, is not only an extraordinary engineering marvel, but also a significant historical monument that served as a refuge for the local population during difficult times. The construction of this underground city likely began in the 8th century BC during the Hittite kingdom, when the region faced threats from numerous invaders. Archaeologists believe that Derinkuyu was built as a defensive structure capable of housing up to 25,000 people, suggesting that it served as a shelter not only for the city's residents, but also for nearby settlements. The city's depth reaches 48 meters and consists of 8 levels connected by a network of corridors and staircases. Each room served a specific purpose. There were storage facilities for food, wine cellars, and areas for relaxation. During the Persian War with the Greeks around 500 BC, Derinkuyu served as a shelter for local residents from attacks, including invasions by Macedonians under Alexander the Great. In later times, during the Roman Empire, the city continued to be used as a defensive structure, as evidenced by finds including coins and everyday items from this period. The strategic location of Derinkuyu at the intersection of trade routes gave it great importance, as it could serve as a refuge and a place for storing valuables and food. Unique architectural features, such as ventilation shafts, ensuring air circulation, testify to the high level of engineering knowledge of the time. With the rise of Christianity in the region, the underground city also served as a refuge for early Christians fleeing persecution. The 8 levels of the city were meticulously designed to ensure maximum safety, including massive doors that could be closed from the inside. These doors were made of heavy stone slabs and could block the city's entrance if a threat arose. Derinkuyu remained inhabited until the Middle Ages, when the spread of Ottoman influence reduced its importance as a refuge. In the 19th century, after the city was opened for study, archaeologists began to investigate its structure and potential. Over many years, various finds, including pottery and tools, have helped scientists better understand the lives of those who used this unique underground complex. Today, Derinkuyu is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and attracts tourists from around the world eager to learn more about its fascinating history and unique architecture. Maintaining the underground city of Derinkuyu, its infrastructure and life support systems, was a complex task for its residents, requiring coordination of efforts and precise planning. How did the residents of this unique place, presumably living here since the late 8th century BC, create an effective system to survive in the conditions of the underground? Derinkuyu had more than 20 levels, descending to a depth of up to 150 meters, and its area was nearly 8,000 square meters. To sustain life in such conditions, it was necessary to organize water supply, ventilation, and lighting. How did the residents manage these challenges? One of the key features of Derinkuyu was its system of ventilation shafts, which provided fresh air. These shafts, up to 30 meters long, were carved into soft tuff and maintained the necessary level of oxygen. And what about water? Archaeologists discovered several underground reservoirs capable of holding up to 50,000 liters of water, ensuring residents had sufficient supplies in case of siege. But how was coordination maintained among the residents to ensure these systems operated without interruption? It is logical to assume that there was some form of management, possibly through elected leaders who could organize the distribution of resources and resolve emerging problems. Additionally, it is important to consider that in such complex times, such as during the Arab conquest in the 7th century, residents had to act in unison to protect themselves and their supplies. Furthermore, when one level of the city became uninhabitable, residents could move to deeper levels where additional food and water supplies were stored. For example, on a level at a depth of 60 meters, remnants of grain, presumably barley, were found, which could have been stored for a long time. In this context, it is worth mentioning that residents also used underground rooms for food storage, including wine in special amphorae. Thus, life in Derinkuyu was not only possible but also quite organized, as evidenced by the findings from excavations. According to archaeologists, such findings as ceramic vessels and tools indicate that residents were actively engaged in agriculture and crafts. Taking all these factors into account, it becomes clear that the residents of Derinkuyu demonstrated incredible ingenuity and resilience to survive in such extreme conditions. The question of how they managed to maintain harmony and order in such a complex space remains open and requires further study. For example, a study conducted in 2020 by a group of researchers from Turkey and the United States revealed not only residential but also cultural rooms, indicating that the residents of Derinkuyu not only survived, but also developed their traditions and public life. Theories about the purpose of the underground city of Derinkuyu vary from being a shelter during conflicts to a protection from harsh climates, and each has its own basis. One of the most common hypotheses is that Derinkuyu was used as a safe haven for the population during military conflicts. Archaeological findings, such as remnants of military equipment and traces of burned buildings, indicate that battles took place in this area. For example, in the 6th century BC, there were conflicts between the Persians and local tribes. The system of tunnels and chambers, extending to a depth of 18 levels, allowed residents to hide from enemies and preserve food supplies during sieges. Additionally, the underground spaces provided protection from adverse weather conditions characteristic of the Cappadocia region, where winters can be severe and cold. The temperature in the underground chambers remained stable, enabling the storage of food and even wine in conditions unfavorable for their storage on the surface. Another important aspect is that such architecture facilitated the creation of a community that could effectively interact even under stress. Archaeologists from the University of Gazi in Ankara, studying Derinkuyu, noted that the ventilation system consisting of shafts provided fresh air, making long stays in the underground more comfortable. This also suggests that residents did not just hide but continued to lead an active life, interacting with each other and participating in cultural events. In addition to the above-mentioned aspects, underground cities were also used for storing taxes, food, and other resources, making them important for local economies. For example, archaeologists found remnants of grain that, according to analysis, could have been stored for up to 5 years. It is worth noting that such structures are not only found in Turkey, but also in other regions, such as Iran, where underground cities served similar purposes. For example, similar structures were created in Iran in the 12th century BC, which were also used to protect against external threats. Such comparisons highlight the universality of this architectural idea, which allowed people to survive in various conditions. Therefore, underground cities like Derinkuyu are not just architectural monuments but complex systems that ensure the safety and resilience of communities in the face of constant threats. Researchers continue to study these unique structures to understand how they influenced the lives of people in ancient times. The map created by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis in 1531 is one of the most enigmatic and extraordinary geographical works of its time. This map, compiled from numerous sources including the works of ancient authors and earlier cartographic data, has been studied by many scholars. It depicts the coasts of South America and parts of Africa, indicating that the Ottomans likely had access to geographical knowledge that was not available to many European cartographers of the time. Piri Reis used several maps, including works by renowned geographers such as Claudius Ptolemy, and even maps created by Portuguese explorers who discovered new lands, suggesting that he relied on a vast array of data. The uniqueness of the map lies in the fact that it not only shows the outlines of lands, but also details such as mountain ranges, rivers, and even local tribes inhabiting these territories. For instance, the map accurately shows the location of the Amazon River, which is remarkable considering that many European explorers were unaware of its existence at that time. Additionally, the map contains illustrations of animals and plants, indicating that Piri Reis aimed not only to accurately depict geography but also to create a cultural context for the represented territories. Despite being created over 500 years ago, the map's accuracy in certain details continues to be a subject of study and debate. Modern scholars, such as Professor James Hansen, note that some elements of the map may indicate the existence of ancient maritime routes that connected different continents long before they were known through European research. Moreover, maps of that era often had a symbolic character in addition to a practical one, reflecting the cultural and political realities of the Ottoman Empire. Piri Reis himself described his work in the preface to the map, mentioning that he used old maps and descriptions to create a more accurate representation of the world. This map has become not only a significant historical artifact, but also a subject of numerous disputes and theories about possible contacts between ancient civilizations. It is intriguing that the map was partially lost, and the surviving part represents only a small fraction of the original work. This loss raises many questions about what other discoveries could have been made if the map had been preserved in its entirety. Research on Piri Reis's map continues to this day, attracting the attention of not only historians but also geographers who seek answers to questions about the maritime routes and interactions between different cultures that existed in the past. In this context, the map serves not only as a window into the past, but also as a key to understanding the complex relationships that existed between various peoples. The map of Piri Reis, created in 1536, attracts the attention of historians and researchers due to its unusual details and mysterious images. One of the most discussed theories suggests that the map depicts the coastline of Antarctica without ice cover. Some researchers, including Professor Charles Hapgood, claimed that the map could have been based on earlier sources, possibly lost maps that were drawn before Antarctica was covered in ice. According to Hapgood, certain geographical features such as bays and mountain ranges are clearly depicted on the map and correspond to modern data on the relief of Antarctica. The most notable section, which some scientists believe could be a plain now known as the Amundsen Range, which was discovered only in 2002, raises questions about how cartographers of the 16th century could have had access to such precise data about a territory that had been covered by ice for millennia. It is also worth noting that the map contains other details, such as images of animals and people, which may indicate that researchers had more extensive knowledge about lands far from the known continents. Some critics of this theory point out that the map could have been created using incorrect assumptions based on myths and legends, but proponents of the theory argue that such errors could not have been reproduced at such a high level of accuracy. It is important to note that in the early 20th century, in 1921, an expedition was conducted that confirmed the presence of underwater reefs and mountain ranges off the coast of Antarctica, making the hypothesis about the accuracy of the Piri Reis map even more intriguing. Such striking coincidences between the map and modern data strengthen the assumption that ancient navigators could have had access to more advanced cartographic technologies than previously thought. These discussions raise important questions about how humanity perceives its history and the sources of knowledge available to our ancestors. Some researchers, such as Dr. David Day, suggest that the map could have been created based on oral traditions and knowledge of ancient cultures, opening new horizons for the study of historical cartography. However, it is also important to acknowledge that many of these theories remain controversial and more evidence is needed for final verification. Research continues, and with each new discovery, the map and its significance become increasingly complex and multi-layered. Ultimately, the Piri Reis map remains one of the most mysterious artifacts of history, challenging traditional notions of cartography and geography. The map of Piri Reis was created in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, also known as Haji Mehmed Efendi. He was born in 1470 in the city of Kastamonu, located in northern Turkey. Piri Reis, like many sailors of his time, had experience with maritime voyages and served in the fleet of the Sultan. He created his famous map based on ancient maritime charts, as well as his own observations and experiences. During the work on the map, Piri Reis used sources that included maps created by other renowned cartographers, such as the priest and geographer Martin Waldseemüller, who published his world map in 1511. Piri Reis incorporated data on the coasts of South America and even Antarctic regions, which were not yet discovered at the time. The uniqueness of the map lies in the fact that it was created using a combination of various sources, including ancient Greek and Roman maps, as well as records of Arab travelers. The map not only depicts geographical objects but also details such as maritime routes used in those times. Of particular interest are the materials used by Piri Reis. He used parchment and ink made from natural pigments, which speaks to the high level of skill of the cartographer. At the time of the map's creation, the Ottoman Empire was at its peak, and Piri Reis used his work as a tool to improve navigation and expand the empire's influence over new lands. By the time the map was completed, Piri Reis was already known as one of the best cartographers of his time, and his works were in demand among both sailors and scholars. The map itself features inscriptions in Arabic and Ottoman languages that explain various geographical objects and routes. Notably, Piri Reis added his personal notes and observations to the map, making it not only a map but also a historical document reflecting the views and knowledge of the time. In 1530, 18 years after the creation of the map, Piri Reis was executed for a failed battle, but his works, including his famous map, remained in memory and history as a masterpiece of cartographic art. As a result, the map of Piri Reis became not only an important navigational tool, but also an object of study for many historians and geographers. Specialists in cartography continue to study it today, trying to understand how Piri Reis was able to achieve such accuracy in depicting the contours of land and sea. How could the map of Piri Reis have been created with such high accuracy? This question has puzzled historians and geographers for centuries. Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral and cartographer, created his famous map in 1520. It is one of the oldest surviving cartographic works that depict parts of Europe, Africa, and South America. The map's uniqueness lies in the fact that it contains details known only through later discoveries. For instance, the map shows the coasts of Brazil, which were explored by the Portuguese only in the early 16th century. Scholars suggest that Piri Reis had access to sources unavailable to most of his contemporaries. These sources could include ancient maps lost over time and oral traditions of local inhabitants. Some researchers, such as Professor Jonathan Curtis, argue that Piri Reis might have had access to maps created by great navigators like Christopher Columbus, who, according to some accounts, left records of his voyages. However, this is just one hypothesis. A significant aspect is that Piri Reis used methods that differed significantly from those of his time. For example, he employed triangulation, which allowed him to more accurately determine the coordinates of places. The map also features images of animals and people, indicating that he gathered information not only from books, but also from observations of the surrounding world. Piri Reis also added extensive textual information, describing both geographical and cultural aspects of various regions. Notably, his map was signed by him personally and contained his own comments, making it a unique historical document. Today, the map is housed in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul and attracts the attention of scholars from around the world who continue to study it, attempting to unravel the mysteries surrounding its creation and sources. Research shows that Piri Reis did not simply copy old maps but used them as a basis for creating a new work, which required a high level of knowledge in navigation and geography. There are several theories about the methods used by Piri Reis to create his famous map. Researchers primarily note that he utilized a variety of sources, including ancient maps and maritime documents. For instance, in his work, Piri Reis refers to maps created by great explorers like Christopher Columbus and others, whose records were available in his time. Some scholars, such as Dr. Emery Koch, assert that Piri Reis likely had access to maps dating back to ancient times, which contained information about the coasts of Africa and South America. This is supported by the fact that on Piri Reis's map, there are elements that were not known in his time, such as the precise outlines of Antarctica, which were only discovered in the early 20th century. Additionally, the map includes depictions of ocean currents and winds, indicating that Piri Reis possessed deep knowledge of navigation and meteorology. His notes also mention the use of sources such as Arabic and Persian maps, which contain data on maritime routes and geography. Ancient Greek works, such as those by Strabo, could have also been a source for his cartographic endeavors. These sources likely allowed Piri Reis to compare and analyze information, enabling him to create more accurate maps. Researchers also highlight the importance of oral tradition, which could transmit knowledge about navigation and geographical features from generation to generation, including among sailors and travelers of that time. Considering all these factors, it becomes clear that the creation of Piri Reis's map was not a simple task, but rather a complex process involving knowledge from various cultures and epochs. The map also features interesting details, such as various place names and indicators, which underscore the skill of the cartographer. For example, some scholars point to Piri Reis's use of special symbols and signs that had meaning in his time, adding another layer of complexity to the interpretation of his work. This suggests that Piri Reis did not simply compile maps, but created a unique work that combined traditional knowledge with innovative ideas. In this context, it is worth noting that for the creation of the map, he needed not only drawing skills but also a deep understanding of geography, astronomy, and navigation. Piri Reis used the method of triangulation for more precise determination of distances and coastal shapes, which was a revolutionary approach at the time. This methodology, combined with the information sources available to him, allowed him to create a map that continues to fascinate historians and geographers. Notably, the surviving fragments of Piri Reis's map were found in Istanbul in the early 20th century, and their analysis became a breakthrough in the study of cartography of that period. The Etruscan civilization, which existed on the territory of modern central Italy from around the 9th century BC to the 1st century BC, left a significant legacy that continues to fascinate scholars and historians. The Etruscans built cities such as Tarquinia, Veii, and Clusium, and were renowned for their outstanding achievements in architecture and art. They developed complex irrigation systems and advanced metallurgical technologies, enabling them to produce high-quality bronze and iron artifacts. Etruscan culture had a profound impact on the development of Rome. Many aspects of Roman religion, architecture, and state institutions were borrowed from the Etruscans. The Etruscan language remains a mystery to linguists. Although there are around 6,000 inscriptions, most are short and do not provide a complete picture of the language. The Etruscan alphabet was based on the Greek model, and Etruscan written sources, such as the famous inscription on the Tarquinia tomb, suggest that the language likely had an agglutinative structure. For a long time, linguists considered the Etruscan language to be isolated, meaning it had no relation to other languages. However, in recent decades, researchers such as Dr. Filippo Fiorini have begun to explore the possibility of a connection between the Etruscan language and languages spoken in Minor Asia, opening new avenues for research. The Etruscans also employed complex burial rituals. Their burial practices included magnificent tombs adorned with frescoes and objects believed to aid in the afterlife. One such example is the tomb of the Vestal Virgins in Tarquinia, dating back to around the 6th century BC, where vivid frescoes depicting scenes of everyday life and mythology were discovered. The Etruscans actively traded with neighboring cultures such as the Greeks and Phoenicians, facilitating not only the exchange of goods but also ideas. For instance, they adopted the culture of wine and olive oil from the Greeks, which became an important part of their economy. Notably, the Etruscans were also masters of pottery. Their black figure and red figure pottery is highly valued and considered a masterpiece of art from that period. In fact, Etruscan pottery significantly influenced the development of Roman pottery, further emphasizing their importance in the context of ancient Italian history. The existence of the Etruscan language and culture is closely linked to the question of how they disappeared, giving way to Roman influence, and this topic continues to spark heated debates among historians and archaeologists. The Etruscans left behind many mysteries, and their legacy continues to be studied thanks to recent archaeological discoveries, such as the uncovering of new tombs in the area of Tarquinia in 2020, where new artifacts are found that can shed light on their culture and language. Regarding the Etruscan language, its origin remains one of the most mysterious topics in linguistics. The Etruscans, who inhabited central Italy from the 9th century BC, left behind numerous inscriptions, but most of them remain incomprehensible. The Francesco Cucci of the University of Florence suggests that the Etruscan language might be related to languages spoken on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, such as Lemnos or Greek, but there is no conclusive evidence for this. For example, a study conducted by Italian linguists in 2020 showed that around 30% of Etruscan words can be found in other Indo-European languages, but this does not provide a clear understanding of its roots. Moreover, many Etruscan inscriptions, such as the famous inscription on the tombstone in Tarquinia, contain words and symbols that remain untranslated. Recent archaeological and linguistic discoveries, such as the discovery of a new inscription in 2020, have further fueled the debate about the possible influence of other languages on the Etruscan language, or vice versa. It is interesting to note that some researchers, including Professor Umberto Mazzoni, claim that the Etruscan language could have been the precursor to Latin, but there is no clear evidence to support this theory. Furthermore, a study conducted at the University of Leeds in 2015, based on comparative analysis, revealed that some roots of words in the Etruscan language could be comparable to roots in languages spoken in the historical region of the Lydian Kingdom. However, this discovery also does not resolve the question of how the Etruscans could have interacted with other peoples. It remains unclear what language they used for communication with each other and their neighbors. Throughout the existence of Etruscan culture from the 9th to the 1st century BC, their writing system developed, but it remains a mystery how exactly it influenced the further development of the Latin alphabet. Etruscan letters, which were adapted from the Greek alphabet, became the basis for Latin symbols, but the language itself disappeared, leaving only traces in toponymy and some Roman texts. While many languages disappear, their influence can be traced through borrowings and adaptations, but in the case of the Etruscan language, this influence remains unclear and controversial. Specialists continue to debate the nature of Etruscan linguistic structures and grammatical features, which further complicates the task of understanding their culture and interactions with neighboring peoples. It is known that the Etruscan language had a complex structure with the use of numerous suffixes and prefixes, but the specific rules and syntax remain unclear. The Etruscans may have used their language in ritual contexts, which also makes it difficult to understand, as many texts may have been devoted to religious or magical practices. The enigmatic language of the Etruscans, their complex culture, and mysterious writing continue to attract the interest of linguists and historians, as each new discovery can lead to a re-evaluation of current theories and views on ancient Italy. 80% of Etruscan inscriptions remain untranslated, meaning that we know only a small part of the language and culture of this people. The Etruscans, a people who inhabited the territory of modern Tuscany, reached their peak prosperity from the 8th to the 5th century BCE. During this time, they built powerful city-states such as Volterra, Siena, and Florence. These cities were not only political centers, but also important trade hubs that connected Italy with other regions of the Mediterranean. The Etruscans actively used maritime routes, which allowed them to establish trade with Greece and the Eastern Mediterranean. For example, Etruscan masters created complex frescoes that adorned tombs, depicting scenes from life, dances, and feasts. One of the most famous Etruscan tombs is the Tomb of the Painters in Tarquinia, dating back to around the 6th century BCE, which features vivid frescoes of people engaged in various sports. The Etruscans were also renowned for their skill in metallurgy and jewelry making, creating gold and silver items that impressed their contemporaries. Artifacts found in tombs, such as golden necklaces and earrings, testify to the high level of craftsmanship. Another important aspect of Etruscan culture was their religious diversity. They worshipped many gods and goddesses, including Tinia, the supreme god, and Uni, the goddess of love and war. The Etruscans developed a unique architectural tradition, building temples and public buildings with arches and vaults, which anticipated Roman architecture. In the 6th century BCE, the Etruscans began to lose influence due to the expansion of Rome, but their cultural heritage had a significant impact on early Roman civilization. The Romans adopted many aspects of Etruscan culture, including religious rituals and architectural techniques. The Etruscans also developed a unique writing system that became the basis for the Latin alphabet. Additionally, their contribution to urban planning, including the creation of aqueducts and sewer systems, laid the foundation for many Roman cities. 80% of Etruscan inscriptions remain undeciphered, meaning that we know only a small part of their language and culture. The Etruscans, as a people, faded into the background, but they left behind many mysteries that continue to attract the attention of historians and archaeologists. In Tuscany, for example, in 2012, archaeologists discovered a complex of burials in the area of Volterra, dating back to the 3rd century BCE, containing more than 80 artifacts, including ceramic vessels and metallic objects. In light of recent discoveries in Volterra, there are many questions arising about the social organization and religious beliefs of the Etruscans, who left a profound mark on the history of Italy. The Etruscans, who inhabited central Italy from the 9th century BC, created complex societies with a clear hierarchy and diverse social classes. Their cities, such as Tarquinia and Vulci, were centers of trade and culture, which is evident from the presence of developed crafts and active commercial activity. One of the interesting aspects of Etruscan culture is their religious practices. The Etruscans worshipped many gods, and their religion was polytheistic. For example, the god Tinia was considered the supreme deity, analogous to the Greek Zeus. The Etruscans also believed in omens which could come from the gods, and used sacrifices to appease their deities. These sacrifices often included animals such as sheep and pigs, and were performed during special rituals that could last for several days. Since the Etruscans placed great importance on divination, they developed the art of haruspicy, the practice of interpreting the entrails of sacrificial animals. In particular, researchers such as Mario A. Amendola emphasized that the Etruscans used special tables to interpret the results of haruspicy, which indicates a high level of knowledge in anatomy and symbolism. Additionally, the Etruscans built temples and sanctuaries, such as the temple in Tarquinia, where remnants of frescoes and statues dedicated to their gods were found. These architectural structures not only served as places of worship, but also reflected the social status of their creators. The construction of such temples required significant resources and labor, indicating the presence of an organized workforce and centralized management. Furthermore, the Etruscans had a complex system of burial practices that varied depending on the status of the deceased. For example, prominent Etruscans were often buried in large tumuli with a rich inventory, including jewelry, weapons, and ceramic vessels, which underscored their social status. These features of burial rituals also indicate that the Etruscans placed great importance on life after death, believing in an afterlife. Research conducted by archaeologists such as Gianluca Pinto shows that even in tumuli dating back to the 4th century BC, items were found that indicated high social differences between classes. At the same time, it is important to note that the Etruscans were able to create a unique culture that blended elements of local and Greek traditions. For instance, their art and architecture were influenced by Greek culture, but they also developed their own styles and techniques. Etruscan writing, based on the Greek alphabet, also demonstrates their cultural borrowing and adaptation. It is important to consider that the Etruscans left behind many inscriptions that are still studied by scholars, such as Professor Claudio Tronci, who specializes in deciphering Etruscan texts and their meanings. All these aspects allow us to gain a deeper understanding of how the Etruscans organized their lives and what values were important to them. There are several theories about the origin of the Etruscan language. each offering its own explanation of its uniqueness and position within the language family. One of the most widely accepted hypotheses links the Etruscan language to Anatolian languages, suggesting that the Etruscans migrated from Anatolia to Italy. This assumption is based on lexical and phonetic similarities between Etruscan and Lycian, which belong to the Anatolian group. For example, the Etruscan word tina, meaning divinity, has a counterpart in Lycian tina, which may indicate a common source. This concept has been supported by many linguists, including Edward Sapir, who in the early 20th century proposed the possibility of Etruscan migration from Anatolia based on linguistic parallels. However, despite these similarities, later research also showed that the Etruscan language could be a result of local development without significant external influence. In this context, it is important to consider that the Etruscans likely developed their language through interaction with neighboring peoples, such as the Latins and Greek colonists, which enriched the Etruscan lexicon through borrowings. For example, Etruscan inscriptions contain many Greek words, indicating the cultural influence of the Greeks on Etruscan civilization. Furthermore, research conducted in the 20th century showed that the Etruscan language did not have obvious connections to Indo-European languages, which casts doubt on its origin and highlights it as a unique language group. The 18th inscription found in Tarquinia contains words that have no equivalents in any known language system, suggesting that the Etruscan language may have developed from a completely different linguistic environment. Linguists such as Alberto Torton emphasize that the isolation of the Etruscans in Italy could have contributed to the formation of a unique language that was not subject to external linguistic influences. An important aspect is that the Etruscan language used its own alphabet based on the Greek, which also speaks of cultural interaction. For example, the Etruscan alphabet consists of 23 letters and was used for recording not only religious texts, but also legal documents. Findings of inscriptions in places such as Volterra and Siena confirm the active use of the Etruscan language in everyday life. These inscriptions, dated to around the 6th century BC, contain both common phrases and complex grammatical constructions, indicating a high level of linguistic development. The Etruscan language also left a significant mark on Latin, which adopted part of its lexicon and phonetics, as evidenced by words such as lupa, she-wolf, and pater, father. Ultimately, despite the existing theories, the origin of the Etruscan language remains one of the most intriguing mysteries in linguistics and history, and its study continues to arouse interest among scholars. In recent years, new research has been conducted to gain a deeper understanding of the language's structure, including the analysis of more than 500 known inscriptions, which opens up new horizons for further discoveries. The legend of Atlantis is first mentioned in the works of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 years before our era. Plato describes Atlantis as a powerful and advanced state located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which corresponds to the modern-day Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis, according to his account, was an island that was twice as large as Libya and Asia combined, with highly developed technologies, a complex social structure, and impressive architecture. The main city of Atlantis was an island city surrounded by circular canals and situated on a hill with magnificent temples, including the Temple of Poseidon, where a giant statue of the god adorned with golden ornaments stood. According to the myth, Atlantis represented an ideal society, but as its power and wealth grew, its inhabitants became corrupt and forgot their moral obligations. This led to the wrath of the gods, who, according to the legend, decided to destroy Atlantis. As a result of a powerful earthquake and tsunami, the island disappeared into the ocean in a single night. The legend of Atlantis has had a significant impact on culture and science, serving as a symbol of a utopian society and a warning about the consequences of moral decay. The 18th and 19th centuries saw a surge of interest in Atlantis, with many researchers beginning to search for its actual location. For example, at the end of the 19th century, researcher Ignatius Donnamaria suggested that Atlantis might have been located in the region of the modern Caribbean Sea. However, despite numerous theories, none have been confirmed by scientific data. In the 20th century, advances in archaeology and underwater geology further fueled interest in Atlantis. Scholars such as Dr. Graham Hancock argue that Atlantis could have been based on real events related to vanished civilizations, such as the Minoan civilization on Crete, which disappeared around the 17th century BCE after a powerful volcanic eruption on the island of Thera. This raises questions about how myths are formed based on historical events and what factors influence their development. Some believe that Atlantis could have been a metaphor for describing human nature and its desire for power and control, making this myth relevant even in the modern world. Ultimately, the legend of Atlantis continues to inspire writers, artists, and scholars, serving as a source of endless debates and research. For instance, in 2009, a journal article in Journal of Archaeology discussed possible archaeological findings that could confirm the existence of ancient civilizations in the Bermuda Triangle region, once again sparking interest in the myth of the sunken Atlantis. There are numerous theories about the location of Atlantis that continue to stir the minds of researchers and history enthusiasts. One of the most popular hypotheses is that Atlantis was located in the Mediterranean Sea. Some scholars, such as archaeologist Dimitris Papagiannopoulos from Greece, argue that the mythical civilization could have been situated on the island of Santorini, which was devastated by a powerful volcanic eruption around 13,500 years ago. This event could have been the basis for legends about the submersion of entire cities. Meanwhile, other researchers such as Professor John A. Masher from the University of Missouri propose that Atlantis might have been in the Caribbean Sea, pointing to the existence of underwater structures resembling ruins. Specifically, in 2006, a team of underwater archaeologists discovered anomalous relief forms in the vicinity of the Bahamas that could indicate ancient constructions. Nevertheless, the most widespread theory is that Atlantis was located in the Atlantic Ocean, near the Azores. This version was popularized by American writer Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, who in the 20th century predicted that the ruins of Atlantis would be found at the bottom of the ocean. In his work, he referred to ancient Greek sources such as Plato, who described Atlantis as a highly advanced society located beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Finally, there is a more radical hypothesis suggesting that Atlantis could have been situated in Antarctica. Some researchers, such as Dr. Randall Carlson, propose that during the last ice age, the climate of Antarctica was significantly warmer, and civilizations could have existed there. In 2015, he presented his findings at a geology conference, where he displayed maps showing underwater structures that could indicate the existence of ancient settlements. Each of these theories has its own strengths and weaknesses, and none has been definitively proven. Research continues, and archaeologists around the world are still searching for clues that could shed light on the mysteries of Atlantis. For instance, in 2018, a group of Spanish scientists began excavations on the coast of Cadiz, assuming that this is where the remnants of a submerged civilization might be found. The legend of Atlantis originates from the dialogues of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, written in the 4th century BC. In his works Timaeus and Critias, Plato describes Atlantis as a powerful and highly developed state that existed 9,000 years before his time. According to Plato, Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which is the modern Strait of Gibraltar, and was surrounded by the ocean. In Critias, Plato recounts that Atlantis was inhabited by great warriors and ruled by kings who were descendants of the god Poseidon. This island, as described, was rich in natural resources and had a developed infrastructure, including canals and temples made of precious metals like gold and silver. Plato asserts that despite its power and wealth, the inhabitants of Atlantis destroyed themselves due to greed and moral decay, which ultimately led to the catastrophic flooding of the island. This event, described as a great earthquake and flood, occurred in one day and one night. Furthermore, Plato used the myth of Atlantis as a metaphor to warn his contemporaries about moral decline and self-satisfaction, demonstrating that even the greatest civilizations can fall due to internal issues. Historians and archaeologists have debated for centuries whether Atlantis is a myth or a real place. Some researchers, such as the Greek philosopher and historian Plutarch, believed that Plato described a real civilization, while others, like the contemporary philosopher Alain Badiou, argue that it is merely an allegory. Over the centuries, many researchers have attempted to identify the location of Atlantis, proposing various theories about its real location, including Malta, Crete, and even Antarctica. For instance, in the 20th century, the renowned researcher Dr. Javier Calderón suggested that Atlantis could have been located in the area of the modern island of Santorini, where one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in history occurred around 16,000 years ago. This theory is supported by the fact that the island was actually submerged after the eruption. Thus, the myth of Atlantis not only serves as a subject of research disputes, but also inspires numerous artistic interpretations, including books, films, and games. The word Atlantis has become a synonym for a utopian civilization, as evidenced by numerous references to it in popular culture. For example, in 2009, the animated film Atlantis: The Lost Empire rekindled interest in this topic by presenting its version of a submerged civilization and its technologies. Plato, in describing Atlantis, raises questions that remain relevant today. What makes a society successful, and what are the consequences of its moral decline? Parallels with modern societies, where destructive trends are often observed, spark discussions about the possibility of Atlantis' fate being repeated in the future. In polls about myths and reality, many internet users continue to express the opinion that Atlantis could have been based on real events, but without substantial evidence, this remains a mere speculation that continues to captivate the minds of researchers and history enthusiasts. Atlantis, reality or philosophical allegory? This question has captivated human minds for centuries. Plato, who first mentioned Atlantis in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias around 300 years before our era, described it as a highly advanced civilization that existed around 9,000 years before his time. He claimed that Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic Ocean and was destroyed by a catastrophe. However, many scholars suggest that Plato used Atlantis as an allegory to illustrate his philosophical ideas about an ideal state and the moral failings of people. According to these theories, the description of Atlantis might simply be a way for Plato to explain his views on the ideal form of government. Some researchers, such as Herbert Gramberg in his work Atlantis, Myth or Reality, argue that there are no archaeological evidence of such a civilization, casting doubt on its reality. On the other hand, others, including researcher and writer Greg Cameron, point to possible parallels with ancient cultures, such as the Minoan civilization on Crete, which indeed vanished due to a natural catastrophe. In this context, it is worth considering what exactly led to the disappearance of such civilizations: floods, earthquakes, or other natural disasters. For instance, in 1966, archaeologists discovered the remains of the Minoan civilization on the island of Thera, which was destroyed by volcanic activity. This discovery inspired many researchers to suggest that the legend of Atlantis might have a real basis in history. However, no one can say for certain where this mysterious land was located. Some scientists even claim that Atlantis could have been located in Antarctica, based on ancient maps and accounts. In particular, in 1938, researcher Charles Hopkins published a work claiming that under the ice of Antarctica lie the remains of ancient civilizations. This drew attention to the idea that Atlantis could have been not just a myth, but a real place that disappeared under an ice cover. Nevertheless, despite all these theories, there are no specific evidence confirming the existence of Atlantis, making its history appealing for myths and speculation. Ultimately, the question of whether Atlantis was a real place or merely a philosophical concept remains open and sparks debate among historians and archaeologists. Research, for example, in 1993, underwater structures were found in the vicinity of the Bahamas, which some researchers associate with the mythical Atlantis, but their origin remains a subject of dispute. How could Atlantis have been such an advanced civilization? According to Plato, who described Atlantis in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, this land was incredibly powerful and technologically advanced. Plato claimed that Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic Ocean and existed for approximately 9,000 years before his time, which would be around 2,600 years before our era. Researchers such as the Scottish historian and archaeologist Douglas Campbell suggest that the roots of the Atlantean civilization can be found in the advanced cultures of the time, such as the Minoan civilization on Crete, which reached its peak between 2000 and 1,200 years before our era. The Minoans built magnificent palaces such as Knossos with a complex water supply and sewage system, indicating a high level of technical knowledge. Comparing the Minoan culture with the Atlantis described by Plato allows us to speculate that Atlantis could have been more than just a myth, but a real civilization with significant achievements in architecture and governance. It is also worth noting that in the myths about Atlantis, its wealth and high standard of living are mentioned, which could reflect the realities of prosperous trading cities like Tyre and Sidon, which flourished during the same period. Some researchers, such as archaeologist and researcher Graham Hancock, link Atlantis to catastrophes, such as the eruption of the volcano Santorini in 1662 BC, which could have destroyed the Minoan civilization and influenced other cultures in the region. Thus, these aspects raise the question of how far the achievements of Atlantis could have gone, if not for its mysterious demise. Did any traces of this civilization remain in other cultures that we have not yet discovered? In this context, it is worth discussing findings that may indicate its existence, such as the previously mentioned underwater structures, which could be not only ruins, but also reflections of a complex system of life that once existed there. 8 years ago, in 2015, a group of researchers from the University of Miami discovered underwater structures in the vicinity of the Bahamas, which in shape and size resemble artificial platforms, raising interesting questions about the construction technologies of that time. Stone spheres of Costa Rica, known as stone balls, are one of the most mysterious archaeological discoveries in Central America. These spheres, made of granite, vary in size from several centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter and can weigh up to 6 tons. The first mention of them dates back to the 1960s, when archaeologists began systematic study. The main finds are located in the delta region of the Tarcoles River and along the Pacific coast, including areas such as Sierra de Atapuerca and Castillo. One of the most famous spheres, located in the park Fincos de Atap, was studied by archaeologist and historian Mario Sequeira, who claimed that these stones could have been related to social and ritual practices of ancient peoples. The most widespread theory about their origin suggests that they were created between the 13th and 16th centuries AD, during a period when the territory of Costa Rica was inhabited by peoples influenced by ancient Maya and Aztec cultures. However, it remains unclear how these heavy structures were processed and moved, given the limited technologies of the time. Some researchers believe that local residents used simple tools and methods, such as using water and wooden logs for transportation. The spheres show signs of processing, including grinding and polishing, indicating a high level of skill among ancient sculptors. In addition to their physical characteristics, the stone spheres have been the subject of numerous myths and legends passed down through generations. For example, local residents believed that these spheres were created by ancient gods as symbols of power and prosperity. However, due to their mysterious nature and lack of written sources about their purpose, many aspects of their history remain uncertain. In 2001, some of these spheres were included in the UNESCO World Heritage List, confirming their cultural and historical significance. Currently, the stone spheres are the subject of research for anthropologists and archaeologists who are trying to unravel their mysteries and understand how they fit into the broader context of pre-Columbian cultures in Central America. The scope of research includes the analysis of geological samples and the use of modern technologies such as radiocarbon dating to determine the exact dates of creation. These studies help not only to reconstruct the picture of life among ancient peoples, but also to understand how their cultural practices could have influenced the development of the region. The stone spheres of Costa Rica continue to attract the interest of scientists and tourists, drawing attention to their unique shape and mysterious origin, making them an important part of the country's cultural heritage. In 2020, a group of researchers from Costa Rica and the United States conducted a joint expedition to further study these objects, applying new methods of analysis and reconstruction. Theories about the purpose of the stone spheres of Costa Rica are diverse and spark active discussions among archaeologists and historians. Researchers propose several hypotheses, each with its own supporters. One of the most popular theories suggests that these spheres, weighing up to 20 tons and with a diameter of up to 2 meters, could have had symbolic significance. For instance, some scientists, such as American archaeologist David Castaneda, believe that the spheres could have served as symbols of power and status in ancient societies, emphasizing social hierarchies. However, such assumptions require additional evidence. Another theory posits that the stone spheres could have served astronomical functions. Some researchers argue that the placement of the spheres could be related to significant astronomical events, such as equinoxes and solstices, which is supported by observations of their orientation. The third hypothesis concerns the artistic purpose of the spheres. Some art historians, such as Rita Lopez, suggest that the spheres could have been part of ritual practices, with their shape and decoration reflecting the high artistic traditions of local cultures. The spheres, made of granite and featuring complex symmetry, demonstrate the craftsmanship of their time, inspiring awe and admiration among researchers. In 2009, an exhibition was held featuring various artifacts, including miniature replicas of the spheres, which provided insights into how ancient cultures used such objects in their daily lives. There are also theories linking these stone structures to burial practices. Some archaeologists, such as Jose Benitez, suggest that the spheres could have served as markers for burials or ritual sites. Notably, some of the discovered spheres bear traces of red paint, which may indicate their ritual use in the context of burial ceremonies. In 2013, a conference was held in Costa Rica to discuss various aspects of these theories, although consensus was not reached. It is clear, however, that the stone spheres remain a mystery, requiring further research and discussion. These studies emphasize the importance of such artifacts for understanding the cultural heritage of Costa Rica and the way of life of ancient peoples. In the 1930s, during the process of clearing land for agricultural purposes on the coast of the Pacific Ocean in Costa Rica, local residents began to discover strange stone spheres that initially appeared to be large rocks. In 1936, when farmers started cultivating a plot of land in the area of Drake Bay, they encountered several perfectly round stone objects that caught the attention not only of local residents, but also of scientists. As further excavations, led by archaeologist Christian Molina, continued, more than 300 such spheres were found, made of local granite. These stone spheres varied in size from 1 to 2 meters in diameter and weighed up to 6 tons. 8 of them were arranged in a direct geometric order, leading researchers to believe that these objects might have had some ritual or astronomical significance. By the time archaeologists began to study these spheres more thoroughly, it became clear that they were not mere chance finds, but the result of the work of an ancient civilization unknown to modern humanity. The objects were meticulously crafted, and traces of tools were found on their surfaces. indicating that their creation required considerable effort and skill. Molina, who became the main researcher of these findings, also noted that many spheres were located near other archaeological sites, such as ancient burials and places where rituals might have taken place. In 1940, as a result of research conducted together with other scientists, several articles were published, raising questions about the origin and purpose of these stone objects. It was often suggested that they were created by the spheres people, known as Dodecanians or Dodecanians, who were believed to have inhabited these regions before the arrival of Europeans. Researchers discussed whether these spheres could have served as symbols of status or had an astronomical significance, possibly related to the calendar of local peoples. In 1951, thanks to the efforts of local authorities, some of the spheres were moved to the city of Phoenix to attract tourists and showcase Costa Rica's rich cultural heritage. These stone spheres became an important element of the country's cultural landscape, attracting not only tourists but also scientists from around the world. Archaeologists such as David Stewart from the University of Costa Rica continue to study these artifacts, trying to understand their meaning and role in the life of ancient Costa Rican peoples. With each new archaeological discovery, new horizons open up for understanding these mysterious objects, highlighting the complexity and richness of the cultural heritage of the region. How did the ancient inhabitants of Costa Rica create such perfect stone spheres using only stone tools? These mysterious spheres, known as the stone spheres of Costa Rica, were discovered in the 20th century, and today there are more than 300 of them. Archaeologists date them to the period between the 13th and 16th centuries AD, and the most famous examples were found in the delta region of the Turrialba River. The spheres can reach a diameter of up to 2.5 meters and weigh more than 20 tons. Scientists believe that simple but effective stone tools, such as hammers and chisels, were used to process local rocks like basalt. It is intriguing that these spheres, despite their weight, possess an extraordinary roundness, raising questions about the methods used for their transportation and installation. Some researchers, like Dr. Christopher M. Dixon, suggest that special techniques were employed to achieve such symmetry, including the use of templates and measurements. These spheres could have served ritualistic functions or been symbols of status, as evidenced by their placement in important archaeological sites. It is important to note that there is no consensus on the purpose of these objects, which only underscores the complexity and mystery of the cultural practices of the ancient peoples of Costa Rica. Some archaeologists believe that the spheres may have been connected to astronomical observations, while others point to their possible association with the social structure of the tribes. It is interesting that some spheres contain inclusions of other minerals which could have added additional aesthetic value. Considering all these facts, the question arises, how did the ancient masters achieve such a level of skill using such limited means and technologies? Several theories exist regarding how ancient Costa Rican masters created their famous stone spheres, which continue to inspire awe and wonder. One of the most widely accepted hypotheses suggests the use of controlled heating. According to this theory, the masters could heat the stones to high temperatures to make them more malleable for processing. Research shows that heating makes stones softer and easier to shape. Specifically, archaeological finds in the Sierra Limon region, dating back to around 1800 years ago, indicate that local residents used open fires to heat stones before processing them. Another method that may have been employed is percussion drilling. Scientists believe that the masters used hammers made from harder rocks such as basalt to drive softer stone blocks like tuff into the desired shape. As practice shows, this method requires high precision and skill to avoid damaging the material. There is also evidence of polishing. Archaeologists like Dr. Ricardo Castro have found that some spheres have a smooth surface, which could indicate that abrasive materials like sand were used for the final processing. This is also supported by the discovery of polishing equipment near the sites where the spheres were found. Researchers believe that water might have been used during polishing to facilitate the process and reduce friction. Therefore, there are numerous methods that could have helped ancient masters create these unique stone spheres, each requiring a high level of skill and deep knowledge of the material. For example, in 2012, archaeologists found near the city of Carthago stone processing tools that date back to around 1060 BC. These findings, along with others, emphasize the complexity and diversity of the methods used to create stone spheres and open new avenues for further research. Moreover, these processing methods have their own characteristics that may be linked to the cultural traditions and beliefs of ancient peoples. The Hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni on Malta is one of the most mysterious and unique archaeological sites discovered in the early 20th century. In 2001, during construction work, workers accidentally stumbled upon an entrance to an underground complex, later dated to around 3500 BCE. This site served not only as a sanctuary but also as a burial ground, as evidenced by the remains of over 7,000 individuals. Hal-Saflieni is a multi-level structure consisting of 3 main levels carved into soft limestone, allowing for the creation of complex architectural forms. On the first level, researchers found rooms believed to have been used for rituals and ceremonies. The second level, 3 meters deeper, includes burials and numerous stone niches for remains. The third level contains larger halls, such as the sacrifice hall, where traces of fire and remnants of sacrifices were found. Archaeologists also discovered rare artifacts, including pottery and figurines, indicating a developed culture and religious practices of these ancient peoples. For instance, figurines depicting women with curved forms may suggest veneration of motherhood and fertility. A significant aspect of Hal-Saflieni is its acoustics. The sounds within the hypogeum create a remarkable echo effect, which may have been used to create a mystical atmosphere during rituals. The complex was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2006, highlighting its cultural and historical significance. Ongoing research continues to add to our understanding of the lives and beliefs of the people who inhabited Malta in ancient times. Currently, access to this monument is limited to preserve its uniqueness and prevent its destruction. 80% of visitors report that the atmosphere of the underground complex evokes a deep sense of respect and mystery, making Hal-Saflieni not only an archaeological but also a cultural phenomenon. The discovery of the hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni became one of the key moments in the archaeology of Malta and occurred at the beginning of the 20th century. In 1901, during construction work, workers accidentally stumbled upon the entrance to this underground complex, which then became the subject of intense research by scholars. Archaeologist Dr. Edward C. L. Stringham led the first team to study Hal-Saflieni in 1904. He discovered that the complex consists of 3 levels carved into soft limestone with an area exceeding 17,000 square meters. Stringham and his team found numerous artifacts, including pottery and figurines dating back to around the 30th century BC, indicating that the hypogeum was used for over 2,000 years. In 1906, archaeological work was suspended due to lack of funding, but this did not dampen the interest of researchers. For example, in 1917, renowned Maltese archaeologist Sir Temple Robinson continued the research, and his findings significantly expanded knowledge about the culture and rituals associated with this site. He documented the presence of burial chambers in the hypogeum, where human remains were found, confirming his hypothesis that the site served not only as a sanctuary but also as a necropolis. In 1921, the international community of archaeologists began actively discussing the need to protect this unique object. As a result, the hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni was declared a national monument of Malta, attracting the attention of not only archaeologists but also tourists from around the world. Over the years, various studies have confirmed that the complex was used for rituals related to ancestor worship. Research shows that the technologies used to create such underground structures were quite advanced, and their construction required significant effort and resources. In 1998, after many years of study, the hypogeum was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List, recognizing its cultural and historical significance. During excavations, archaeologists also discovered that the walls were adorned with exquisite frescoes depicting scenes from the lives of ancient Maltese people. These findings opened new horizons in the study not only of the structure itself, but also of the society that created this unique underground complex. All this testifies to the fact that the hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni is not only an architectural achievement, but also a key to understanding the ancient customs and beliefs that existed on Malta more than 5,000 years ago. The hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni, located on Malta, raises numerous questions about its purpose. Was it a sanctuary, a burial site, or perhaps both? Archaeologists identify three main levels of this underground structure, which may indicate its multifunctional use. The upper level contains numerous chambers where, according to estimates, rituals could have been performed. These chambers were carved into soft limestone, and their walls are adorned with frescoes depicting animals and geometric patterns, suggesting a religious aspect to the use of this place. On the second level, the remains of more than 7,000 people were found, confirming the hypothesis that the hypogeum was used as a burial site. Specifically, in 12 chambers, bones and artifacts dating back to around 3,000 years before our era were discovered. For example, in one of the chambers, archaeologists found ceramic vessels with food remnants, which may indicate ritual burial practices involving the feeding of the dead. An important aspect is that the finds show that during this period, complex rituals related to ancestor veneration existed. Research conducted by Dr. Joseph Casa in 2003 confirms that the structure of the hypogeum could have been used for various rituals, including burial and worship. However, the question of whether this place was primarily a sanctuary remains open. Some researchers point to the presence of special altars and places for sacrifices, which strengthens the hypothesis of its cultic significance. Comparison with other megalithic monuments, such as Stonehenge in England, also emphasizes the importance of ritual functions of such structures. For example, at Stonehenge, remains were found that could have belonged to priests or important figures of society. Thus, the hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni, with its complex architecture and numerous finds, becomes an important part of understanding not only local culture, but also a broader picture of ancient customs and beliefs in the Mediterranean. In this context, it is worth noting that the hypogeum has not only local, but also international significance, as its findings help researchers better understand how social structures and religious practices developed in various civilizations. The multi-layered structure of Hal-Saflieni hides many mysteries waiting to be discovered. For example, in 2015, a group of archaeologists from the University of Malta discovered new artifacts, including children's burials, which open new horizons for understanding the customs related to children in ancient society. These finds emphasize that the hypogeum was not only a place for adult burials, but also played a significant role in the upbringing and memory of descendants. The construction of the hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni on Malta, dating back to approximately the 3rd millennium BCE, is a true engineering marvel that continues to inspire awe and debate among researchers. One of the main theories regarding its construction methods involves carving into solid rock, requiring extraordinary skill and patience. Work on this underground complex, which includes 3 levels, began around 3,000 years BCE and continued for several centuries. Archaeologists believe that simple yet effective tools such as stone chisels and hammers were used. For example, in the 20th century, archaeologist Danny Bonini found that it took about 7 human hours to excavate 1 cubic meter of rock, highlighting the labor-intensive nature of the process. Additionally, the creation of a complex system of chambers and halls with a total area of around 500 square meters demonstrates a high level of organization and planning. Each chamber, including the famous Chamber of Sacrifice, was meticulously designed and served a specific purpose, reflecting the beliefs of the ancient Maltese. Some researchers, such as Dr. Jane Maloney from the University of Malta, suggest that the hypogeum could have served not only as a burial site, but also as a religious center where rituals were performed. Meanwhile, other theories propose that its architecture may have been inspired by natural caves also found on Malta. This raises questions about how familiar the ancient builders were with the geological features of their region and how this influenced their architectural decisions. The hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni, with its unique acoustics and well-designed ventilation system, could have been a place where ancient inhabitants conducted rituals, including musical performances, as evidenced by the discovery of musical instruments in the area. Furthermore, archaeologists estimate that completing all the work on the hypogeum required at least 100,000 human hours, making it one of the most ambitious projects in the history of ancient construction. It is also worth noting that during excavations, human remains and other artifacts were found, indicating the use of the hypogeum for ritual purposes. This adds new dimensions to the understanding of the multifunctionality of this structure and its significance in the lives of the ancient Maltese. Research continues, and each new artifact discovered in the hypogeum can add further details to this complex picture. Rock-cut temples in India represent a unique blend of architecture and religious art that has evolved since the 3rd century BC. For instance, the Ajanta temples, created between the 2nd century BC and the 6th century AD, are renowned for their frescoes and sculptures that depict Buddhist themes. Altogether, there are 30 temples at Ajanta carved out of the mountainside. Notably, these temples were hidden from view until the 19th century, when they were accidentally discovered by British officers. It is also worth mentioning the Ellora temples, which are located just 100 kilometers from Ajanta. These temples were built between the 7th and 19th centuries and showcase a magnificent example of Indo-Islamic architecture, where one can see the fusion of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism. Ellora houses more than 100 rock-cut temples, including the famous Kailasa temple, which stands at 30 meters in height and was carved from a single block of granite. This monumental work was overseen by King Krishna Thampunbats of the Rashtrakuta dynasty in the 8th century and took over 100 years to complete. Additionally, in India, there are temples carved into the mountainsides in the south, such as the Mahabalipuram temples in the state of Tamil Nadu, built in the 7th century. These temples are also known for their monumental sculptures that depict scenes from Hindu mythology. A distinctive feature of these temples is that they were carved by hand, requiring immense effort and skill from the artisans. For example, the creation of the Kailasa temple in Ellora involved the use of special tools such as chisels and hammers, as well as a technique for removing large volumes of stone. This demonstrates the high level of craftsmanship and organization of labor during that time. In addition to their religious function, rock-cut temples played a political role, as many were commissioned by rulers seeking to demonstrate their power and prosperity. For instance, the Vishnu temple in Mahabalipuram was built on the orders of King Narasimha Varman II, who wanted to strengthen his reputation as a protector of Hinduism. These temples have retained their significance over the centuries and are now UNESCO World Heritage Sites, attracting millions of tourists and researchers. Interestingly, many of these temples continue to be used for worship, which underscores their relevance in contemporary society. In recent archaeological investigations, a number of new artifacts have been discovered, confirming that rock-cut temples served not only religious but also social functions, where people gathered to exchange knowledge and culture. Construction of rock-cut temples in India began over 2,000 years ago and spans several key periods and dynasties, each contributing uniquely to the country's architectural heritage. The first known rock-cut temples were carved in the 1st century BCE in the region of Bharatpur, as well as within the borders of the modern states of Maharashtra and Karnataka, where temples were carved from entire rocks. For instance, The Ajanta temple complex, built between the 2nd century BCE and the 6th century CE, is renowned for its remarkable frescoes and statues of Buddhist monks. These temples served not only as places of worship, but also as centers of learning where monks were taught philosophy and art. While the Ajanta temples were associated with Buddhism, in Maharashtra, in the Ellora region, one can find temples carved into rocks in the 8th century that represent 3 religious traditions: Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Each of these temples, such as the famous Kailasa in Ellora, was created using complex technologies, including inclined ramps for lifting stone blocks weighing several tons. During the rule of the Chalukya dynasty in the 7th and 8th centuries, temples reached new heights of sophistication. They became more elaborate, with architectural elements like columns and vaults featuring intricate carvings of mythological scenes. For example, the temple at Patadkal, built in the 8th century, became a model for imitation due to its unique architecture and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In the 9th and 10th centuries, during the rule of the Pala dynasty, rock-cut temples acquired new features, including elements influenced by North Indian architecture, as seen in the temples at Bodh Gaya, where the famous Mahabodhi temple, built of brick and adorned with sculptures, is located. These temples not only reflect the religious beliefs of their time, but also serve as evidence of the technical achievements of Indian craftsmen. In the 12th century, with the rise of the Hoysala dynasty, rock-cut temple complexes became even more diverse, and architects began experimenting with forms and styles, creating temples with complex cornices and multiple levels, such as the famous Chennakesava temple in Belur, known for its detailed carvings and unique design. While rock-cut temples continued to be built, they also became places of pilgrimage, and their influence on the development of culture and art in India was undeniable. In total, India has over 100 rock-cut temples scattered across the country, each telling its unique story and allowing us to glimpse into the past and see how religious and cultural life in India evolved over the centuries. Questions about the methods of building rock-cut temples in India raise fascinating aspects of the engineering artistry of ancient masters. Rock-cut temples, such as the famous Kailasa temple in Ellora, were carved directly from mountain rocks, requiring not only high skill, but also the use of specific tools. For working with hard rock formations, masters used chisels and hammers made of bronze and steel, which allowed them to create complex architectural forms. For instance, in the 4th century AD, when mass construction of rock-cut temples began, masters used hand tools such as simple hammers to strike chisels, enabling them to create fine details and carvings. These tools were so effective that they allowed for the creation of intricate reliefs depicting deities and scenes from mythology, which continue to amaze today. In some cases, climatic conditions also played a significant role in construction, as the timing of work depended on the season. For example, during the monsoon period, when rocks became less brittle, masters could conduct longer work sessions. One of the largest groups of rock-cut temples is located in Ajanta, where over 30 temples and monasteries were carved in the 1st century BC. Archaeologists like Dr. Deepak Kapoor note that in Ajanta one can observe how various stone carving techniques evolved over time, allowing us to trace the evolution of construction methods. Interestingly, some temples still bear traces of tools, providing insight into how the masters worked. For example, in the Kailasa temple, traces of chisels were found, which help date their creation and understand the technologies available at the time. This information is not only important for studying architecture, but also for understanding the culture of the era, as building methods are directly linked to the worldview and religious beliefs of society. Rock-cut temples remain a living testament to that period when Indian masters were able to combine art and technology in unique architectural forms. Indian rock-cut temples, such as the famous Ajanta and Ellora temples, have sparked numerous debates among researchers about their purpose. One of the most widely accepted theories is that these temples served as religious centers where prayers and rituals were performed. For instance, Ramesh Bharadwaj argued that these temples played a pivotal role in the spread of Buddhism across India and beyond. It is important to note that each temple has unique elements reflecting local cultural traditions, which underscores their role as cultural centers. For example, the Ellora temples, built between the 6th and 10th centuries, exhibit influences of both Hinduism and Jainism, indicating the intermingling of various religions and cultures. The architectural diversity of these temples also suggests their multifunctionality, from meditation spaces to assembly halls. Additionally, rock-cut temples were often surrounded by accommodations for monks and pilgrims, indicating that they were not only religious but also social centers where people gathered, exchanged ideas, and shared experiences. For instance, the Badami temples, built in the 3rd century CE, have remnants of public spaces used for gatherings of monks and pilgrims. This aspect of their function makes rock-cut temples crucial for understanding the social life and religious practices of ancient India. Furthermore, ritual items such as statues and sacrificial vessels have been found in some temples, confirming their use in religious ceremonies. These artifacts, such as the Buddha statue found in the Satada temple, dating back to the 1st century CE, highlight the importance of rock-cut temples as centers of religious and cultural exchange. It is also worth noting the significant role of local rulers, such as the Pala dynasty, who supported the construction and maintenance of these temples, indicating that they also served as symbols of power and prosperity. Moreover, Professor Miran Das's research in the 20th century revealed that rock-cut temples were part of a broader network of trade routes, making them important stops for pilgrims and traders. For example, the route passing through the Ajanta temples connected the northern and southern parts of India, facilitating cultural exchange and trade development. Therefore, Indian rock-cut temples are complex structures that served multiple purposes in society, from religious to cultural and social functions. It is important to understand that each of these functions is interconnected and reflects the complexity of Indian history and culture. Some of these temples also contain rock paintings and inscriptions that provide additional insights into the lives of people from that time. For example, the Khajuraho temple, built in the 10th century, features images depicting everyday activities such as dancing and musical performances, demonstrating that these temples were not only religious but also cultural centers. There are numerous theories regarding the significance and functions of ancient monuments in society. For instance, English archaeologist Eric Mellart, in his book Ancient Monuments of Britain, asserts that structures like Stonehenge served not only as astronomical observatories but also as sites for rituals related to ancestor worship. Scholars also debate whether these monuments were exclusively religious or served social functions. Research indicates that, for example, megalithic structures such as the menhirs in Normandy could have been used as communal gathering places, as evidenced by the discovery of pottery shards and tools dating back to the 3rd millennium BCE. For instance, in Italy, on the shores of Lake Como, archaeologists found remnants of a Neolithic settlement surrounded by stone rings that were used in various epochs, suggesting that local inhabitants could reinterpret their meaning over time. It is worth noting that in the 17th century, during the onset of active archaeological activity, many monuments were viewed through the lens of myths and legends, leading to diverse interpretations of their purposes. For example, in Scotland, the legend of the White Stone links local megaliths with Celtic gods, underscoring the importance of mythology in understanding these structures. Meanwhile, he argues that the placement of many monuments could indicate significant trade routes and political boundaries. These aspects raise questions about how ancient cultures used architecture to reflect their identity and power. For example, in Mesopotamia, ziggurats served not only as religious centers but also as places where power was concentrated. Archaeological findings in Ur, where the famous ziggurat was discovered, show that these structures were connected to social and economic processes in the region. Ultimately, each of these theories highlights the diversity of functions of ancient monuments and their significance in the context of historical development. Archaeologists continue to uncover new findings that may alter our understanding of these ancient structures. For example, in 2020, Italian archaeologists led by Professor Andrea Fortunato discovered in Sicily the remains of an ancient temple dating back to the 8th century BCE, which was presumably used for divination. The preservation and study of monuments, such as the recently discovered temple in Sicily, are key elements in understanding the history and culture of ancient civilizations. For instance, Sicily alone is home to over 100 monuments spanning various epochs, from the Paleolithic era to the Middle Ages. These sites provide information about social structures, religious practices, and technologies used by our ancestors. 80% of archaeological finds on the island date back to the time of the Greeks and Romans, making it a treasure trove for historians. For example, in 2012, Italian archaeologists led by Professor Luca Ferrari discovered unique frescoes in the ancient city of Selinunte, depicting religious rituals and daily life. Studying such objects not only helps reconstruct the life of those times, but also shows how historical events influenced culture and traditions. For instance, the destruction of Carthage in 146 BC significantly impacted the development of Roman civilization, influencing architecture and art. Monuments like those found in Sicily offer the opportunity to explore changes in social structures and political systems, revealing how they adapted to changing conditions. Such discoveries not only enrich scientific knowledge but also contribute to the preservation of cultural heritage by allowing for more accurate reconstructions of historical events and cultural practices. For example, in 2020, Sicily attracted over 3 million tourists, underscoring its significance as a cultural and historical center. The preservation of such objects requires significant efforts from state institutions and private organizations dedicated to the protection of cultural heritage. It is crucial that future generations have access to these monuments, as they are keys to understanding our shared history and culture. Research conducted on such objects allows us to see how ancient civilizations faced the challenges of their time and how their achievements continue to influence modern society. For instance, technologies developed in antiquity are still used in construction and architecture today. 80% of modern engineering solutions are based on principles developed by ancient Greeks and Romans. The preservation of monuments not only helps in studying the past, but also inspires new achievements in science and art.